Chapter 28-24. The beggar god was on good terms with him. The stronger he was, the more advantageous it would be for him. As long as it was not harmful to the entire human race or the martial sect, they would not go against each other. And Yi Shiwen had no intention of harming the human race or the martial sect. Alas, it has something to do with the Kerfus Road. Although I have long given up the delusion on the Kerfus Road, I have never been able to get rid of it for so many years. Now that the Kerfus Road has collapsed and the opportunity to become a martial emperor has disappeared, the devil and obsession in my heart have also disappeared. Naturally, I can make further progress smoothly. The beggar god sighed. He had a complicated feeling. He had been trying to overcome the devil and obsession in his heart, but unfortunately, he had not been able to do so until the end. If he could overcome the devil and obsession, his cultivation would not only be able to enter the realm of Quasi-Emperor, but also above the middle stage of Quasi-Emperor. His future prospects would also be broader. For a warrior, the devil of the heart was something he feared and loved. If he could not get rid of the devil and was controlled by it, he would not be able to make any progress in his cultivation, just like the beggar god. In the worst case, he would be controlled by the devil and fall into the devil way. However, once the devil of the heart was broken, his cultivation would be greatly improved, and he could even advance several realms in a row. Fortunately, it was not the most miserable situation. He was not controlled by the devil of the heart. In the end, he got rid of the devil of the heart and broke into the realm of Quasi-Emperor. Say it. You don't come to me without a reason. Just say what you want. The beggar god had already calmed down. Yi Shiwen smiled and thought about it carefully. It was true. He had a lot of things to do these years, so he really didn't come to me without a reason. Yi Shiwen did not intend to hide anything, so he told him his purpose of coming. The beggar god's expression became serious. When he looked at Yi Shiwen again, he could not help but be a little surprised. He thought that he had overestimated Yi Shiwen, but now he realized that he had underestimated Yi Shiwen's speed of progress. Unconsciously, the junior who had begged him before was already on the same level as him. Not to mention the fact that he had already defeated a quasi-emperor. Moreover, even if he was preparing to make a breakthrough into the quasi-emperor realm, it was already amazing enough considering his cultivation age. It was simply shocking. Fortunately, such a world-shaking talent did not appear in other races, but was a rising star of the human race. Their martial sect had secretly helped Yi Shiwen several times because they adhered to this principle. When Emperor Qin was on the throne, he had set this policy. The strength of the human race had recovered so quickly in recent years. From the extreme decline in the past, they could now stand on equal footing with the demons. This policy had been implemented for a long time. However, Yi Shiwen's proposal had still shocked him to the core. This is a matter of great importance. I can't make the decision on my own. I have to consult with the Patriarch of Fire Dragon. How about this? I'll take you to see him. Beggar Deity said. That's great. Yi Shiwen said. All right, come with me. Beggar Deity glanced at Yi Shiwen and led him out of the hall. They went directly to the depths of the station. Compared with the station in the Hidden Valley, the Martial Sect Station was undoubtedly much more magnificent. Many powerful formations were activated and operating. It was said that the Emperor Qin had personally strengthened the formations in this station. It was unknown whether the Emperor Qin and the Martial Sect had already been strengthening the station of the Martial Sect in the headquarters of the Allied forces for a long time. After a while, the two had entered a small space in the deepest part of the station. The whole space was empty except for a sea of fire formed by flames. It was like a world of fire purgatory. Greetings, Patriarch. Beggar Deity hurriedly saluted toward the void. Yi Shiwen also saluted. Junior Yi Shiwen greets Senior Fire Dragon Lord. At this time, two huge eyes appeared in the void. They were like millstones. The eyes were incomparably deep, as if a world had exploded in them. Flames were splashing everywhere. Yi Shiwen knew that this was something that could only be achieved by someone who had cultivated the law of fire to a shocking level. Since ancient times, the first person to reach the peak of the law of fire was naturally the earthly emperor, Shinnong. The earthly emperor had another title, Yin Emperor. Apart from him, Yi Shiwen also knew that the Phoenix ancestor, who created the Nanming fire, had amazing attainments in the law of fire. He knew that the Fire Dragon Lord's law of fire couldn't be compared with the other two. But now, it was still rare in the world. Are you Yi Shiwen? A deep voice came from the void, as if asking a question. Yes, I am Yi Shiwen. Facing this super great senior who had been famous for countless years, Yi Shiwen didn't dare to be the slightest bit negligent or disrespectful. Not only because of his powerful strength, but also because of what he had done for the human race, which was worthy of his respect. I have heard of you. Among the newly promoted youngsters, you are even more powerful than Ji Renwang. Now that I see it, your reputation is well-deserved. You should have reached the peak of God King and are ready to cross the tribulation. True Lord Fire Dragon said slowly with a very calm expression. Yes. Yi Shiwen was slightly surprised. Although he had overestimated the Fire Dragon Lord, but now that he had met him, he realized that he had underestimated this world-famous person. It was rare to see someone who could see through him with just a glance. With Yi Shiwen's current strength, even an ordinary quasi-emperor would not be able to see through him. I haven't seen such an outstanding junior for a long time. The Fire Dragon Lord's voice sounded, as if he was sighing with emotion. He didn't know if he was sighing with emotion about his extraordinary years or about Yi Shiwen's amazing performance. Senior is overpraising me, Yi Shiwen said. You're not a straightforward person. I don't casually praise anyone. You've done a good job. At this time, Fiery Dragon Supreme seemed to be a little unhappy and said, Before, I only heard about you from those boys. Now it seems that their initial evaluation of you was very wrong. From the beginning of their evaluation, it has not been many years, but you have already exceeded their expectations. Not bad, not bad. The last time I saw such a person was when I saw the ancestor of their martial sect. Yi Shiwen's heart skipped a beat. He immediately understood that the ancestor of martial sect mentioned by the Fire Dragon Lord should be the Emperor of Qin. He suddenly felt a little excited in his heart. The Fire Dragon Lord had actually compared Yi Shiwen to the Emperor of Qin. Since ancient times, how many people have been able to achieve this? Even comparing them to the Emperor of Qin was an extravagant hope. All right, let's cut to the chase. Just tell me your purpose. I heard that you've formed a hidden alliance. You're now the leader of a region. You're qualified to say a few words. Immortal Fire Dragon said slowly, as if he was talking about a trivial matter. That's right. He didn't look down on Yi Shiwen, nor was he polite because of his identity as the leader of the Hidden Union. Well, I won't beat around the bush in front of a straightforward person. I will get straight to the point. I have come this time to ask Senior for help. Yi Shiwen asked, How can I help you? You are only a peak divine king. However, your strength is not inferior to that of a quasi-emperor. A person like you can go out and become an overlord. So, there is nothing you can't do, the Fire Dragon Lord said slowly. It seemed as if he was talking about a trivial matter. I want to cross the tribulation. I want Senior to help me. Yi Shiwen thought for a moment. Then he decided to tell the truth. You want to cross the tribulation? Yes, you have already reached the peak of the Divine King realm. It will be useless even if you waste millions of years if you don't cross the tribulation. The Fire Dragon Lord had rich experience. He could tell whether Yi Shiwen was speaking the truth or not with just a glance. But how can I help you when you cross the tribulation? I've offended quite a few powerful enemies along the way. For example, the Maasvara Heaven. Yi Shiwen said. He unexpectedly felt a bit embarrassed, just like a naughty child who had met his parents. Ha 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 ha! The Fire Dragon Lord burst into laughter. You're an interesting boy. Very interesting. The Realm of Freedom has a bad temper. However, he is also an arrogant person. Ordinary people are not qualified to offend him. The Fire Dragon Lord paused for a moment. Tell me, how did you offend that guy? Yi Shiwen told him the whole story of the matter. The beggar deity knew that Yi Shiwen had not only offended the original demon clan, but also killed the doppelganger of the Realm of Freedom. For a divine king, this was like piercing the sky. It was no wonder that the beggar deity was worried about the revenge of the Realm of Freedom. Once the news spread, the Realm of Freedom would definitely seek revenge. At that time, The beggar deity wouldn't be able to survive such a surprise attack, even if he had 9 lives. That old guy is a little arrogant, but he still has a good eye. The fire dragon lord said, he wants to take you as his follower. He is really arrogant. Humans are not slaves. This is what the Emperor Qin said. He dares to be so arrogant. You must be very strong. Otherwise, I am afraid you would have been captured by him. Senior, please help me. Yi Shiwen cupped his hands and said, since he was asking for help, he naturally had to show the attitude of asking. I won't help you. I have the task of overseeing the headquarters of the Allied forces. I can't help you. However, I can help you to stall the realm of freedom. As for the rest, you have to pray for luck. Chapter 28-25. Thank you, Senior, Yi Shiwen said quickly. Although it was not the best situation he had imagined, it was not the worst situation either. He could not help but feel very grateful. After all, he was not a member of the martial sect. It was already good enough for him to do this for the sake of the human race. Moreover, even a disciple trained by the martial sect would not be able to do this. It was impossible to grow a big tree in a greenhouse. Only some small flowers could be grown. I can't guarantee anything else. I can only try my best to help you stall Great Freedom Heaven. Other things will depend on the situation. All right, you can go now, Fire Dragon Lord said. Then I will take my leave. Yi Shiwen cupped his hands and said, although he could not get more support, he was still a very important help as long as he was willing to stall Great Freedom Heaven. Among so many possible opponents, the one he feared the most was naturally the realm of freedom. As long as Great Freedom Heaven did not come personally, he could relax a little bit. It was not like he had gained nothing. After leaving the Sea of Fire Plain, Beggar God said, the old ancestor has a heavy responsibility and cannot leave easily. Helping you stall Great Freedom Heaven is already the limit. Well, I understand. Yi Shiwen nodded. Even so, I am very grateful. After all, this is my own business. Well, don't worry. Apart from the Fire Dragon Lord, I will also help you fight for other forces. For the sake of the human race, there is no reason for me to ignore you. Beggar God said, thank you for your help, Senior. Yi Shiwen said goodbye to Beggar God and did not continue to stay in the martial sect station. Instead, he directly returned to the Devil King's treasure house through the key. At this time, Yi Mo and others were still crazily absorbing the Emperor's source to grow. Yi Mo had successfully entered the quasi-emperor realm. Now, he was constantly absorbing the Emperor's source to increase his power and strive to recover to the peak state. You are back? Yi Mo opened his eyes slightly and then closed them again. He continued to absorb the energy in the Emperor's source. Yes. Yi Shiwen nodded and then told Yi Mo about his plan to cross the tribulation. Yi Mo glanced at Yi Shiwen and said, you have to think about it clearly. This time's tribulation is very likely to take your life. When the time comes, all kinds of monsters and demons may appear. I have already thought about it. Yi Shiwen told Yi Mo about the helpers he had contacted, and Yi Mo nodded. Since you're prepared, then it's fine. There's no such thing as a perfect plan. Yi Mo said, when the time comes, I'll lend you a hand. Yi Shiwen nodded. Yi Mo's side was not a big problem, so he would naturally support him. The main problem was with the Sword of Avicii. It was not a big problem for him to control the Sword of Avicii, but if he wanted the weapon spirit of the Sword of Avicii to revive and help him, he would have to agree in advance. At this moment, the Avicii sword was also in the depths of the Empyrean Origin Sea and was frantically absorbing the Empyrean Origin. It had just devoured the Tianqi Emperor's sword and was still in the process of digesting it. Without the help of an Empyrean Emperor, it would take a long time to digest it with its own strength. Fortunately, the only thing it didn't need to worry about was that it had sufficient Empyrean origin. It didn't need to worry for a short period of time, which gave it the possibility of improving in a short period of time. Boy, why did you wake me up? The weapon spirit of the Avicii sword asked faintly. I have something to ask the Senior for help. Yi Shiwen immediately told everything about his matter. It's really troublesome, but I'm helping you this time. Not because you're the master, but because you helped me last time. I'm helping you this time, so we're even. If you want me to recognize you as my true master, Wait until you become an Empyrean emperor first. The tone of the Avicii sword's weapon spirit was still a bit harsh. A weapon spirit of a Taoist tool like him naturally wouldn't easily surrender to others. A situation like Yi Mo, who surrendered to Yi Shiwen by chance, could only be regarded as a phoenix feather and a unicorn horn. Even so, Yi Shiwen had never regarded him as a slave, but treated him as his own brother. In addition to the situation like Yi Mo, the worst-case scenario would be the successor of the previous master. It was difficult to obtain and refine it forcibly like Yi Shiwen did. If Yi Shiwen hadn't risked his life to help him last time and allowed him to swallow the Tianqi Emperor's sword, he might not have paid attention to Yi Shiwen at all. Although Yi Shiwen could also use the Avicii sword, but it was impossible to display the same power in his own hands, so he suffered some losses. Thank you for your help, Senior. Yi Shiwen felt relieved. All of a sudden, all the preparations were completely completed. He sat down cross-legged and crazily absorbed the energy of the Emperor's source like the others. Without the devouring speed of the time robe, his own absorption speed was still relatively slow. While using the mysterious space, he constantly absorbed the energy of the Emperor's source and constantly deduced the more profound way of the quasi-emperor. 10 years quietly passed by. Yi Shiwen's doppelganger was outside contacting various helpers, while his main body was inside the Devil King's treasure house, crazily comprehending. He was adjusting his state to the optimal state in order to prepare for the final tribulation. 10 years later, Yi Shiwen quietly left the Demon King's treasure house, left the prosperous area, and entered the most desolate place in the myriad heavens. It was desolate, and there was silence everywhere. This was the junction of many worlds and spaces, and it was incomparably cold. It was unknown whether it was thousands of degrees below zero or tens of thousands of degrees below zero. There was no way for ordinary creatures to survive in such a place. But for Yi Shiwen, who was already at the Divine King level, it was nothing, and he could walk freely. Then he finally sat down cross-legged and released the imposing aura of his body without reservation. In an instant, it swept out like a wave and spread in all directions. Rumble! The moment Yi Shiwen's imposing aura was released, in the void, among the endless dimensions and space cracks, the tribulation clouds were unknowingly covered. The tribulation clouds covered the sky and brought along a terrifying pressure, crushing down. For a time, many creatures within the radius of countless miles fled in horror. They turned out to be some gods who were sleeping here. Although the environment here was extremely harsh for gods, it was also a good place to not be disturbed. The lifespan of gods was endless. Except for Yi Shiwen, who had an extremely strong sense of urgency, most gods had the experience of sleeping. It was normal to sleep for tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years, which could be used to pass the long lifespan. All of a sudden, all of them were awakened by Yi Shiwen's imposing aura and the pressure of the heavenly tribulation in the sky. Bursts of rumbling sounds came from the tribulation clouds, and thunder dragons constantly shuttled in the tribulation clouds. Looking from afar, it seemed like a kingdom of thunder was about to fall. Many gods fled frantically. They were considered experienced, and how could they not see that someone was crossing the tribulation? There were even some ancient ferocious beasts far away, even outside the tribulation clouds, at this time, were scared to the point of trembling. In the face of the infinite heavenly power, they instinctively rose up in awe and did not dare to resist. Many ferocious beasts simply lay down, lowered their heads, and did not dare to look. Many of these ferocious beasts acted on instinct, so they could feel the horror of these tribulation clouds. Yi Shiwen sat cross-legged in the void, motionless. Right now, he was like an ordinary person immersed in the sea, and there was a powerful pressure from all directions, crushing down on his body. This was different from all the previous tribulations. Just this terrifying pressure alone was pressing down on Yi Shiwen's bones, causing them to make banging sounds and constantly collide. The heavenly tribulation in the sky had not yet fallen, but it was already so powerful. No wonder the expressions of those divine kings changed at the mention of quasi-emperor tribulations. Since ancient times, some weak-peaked divine kings had overestimated their own strength and attracted the heavenly tribulation, but in the end, they did not even pass the first hurdle and were directly crushed into pieces by the terrifying pressure. Yishuan did not know what kind of terrifying heavenly tribulation they faced when they crossed the tribulations, but it was certainly not more terrifying than the heavenly tribulation he was about to face. There seemed to be a huge force tearing his body apart, and his body emitted waves of faint, soft light, which protected Yishuan's entire body. Suddenly, the terrifying pressure disappeared without a trace. Yishuan raised his head and looked at the countless lightning dragons that were constantly flashing in the sky. His facial expression became dignified, but this wasn't what he was most worried about. He knew that the real test had just begun. Walalala! In an instant, endless lightning struck down, and in an instant, the area tens of thousands of miles around him became a kingdom of thunder, a sea of thunder and lightning. His entire body was instantly submerged in these thunderbolts. This is the five elements' divine thunder. Many gods in the distance who had not yet left turned pale when they saw this scene. Back when they had confirmed their Tao and crossed the tribulations, the most powerful thing they had encountered was a few five elements' divine thunder. But this person was crossing the tribulations, and it was at least at the level of the five elements' divine thunder. If it were them, they would be blasted into pieces in an instant. What kind of monster was crossing the tribulations in there? What kind of monster had appeared while they were asleep? His tribulation could attract such a shocking lightning tribulation, and there was no way for him to survive at all. And such a lightning tribulation was still continuing, so they knew that the figure in the center had not been struck to death by the lightning tribulation. They were even more shocked, and they wondered what kind of monster was crossing the tribulations. The lightning tribulation fell like rain, and it did not stop for a single moment for 3 days and 3 nights. Just as the gods who were watching from afar were about to leave, they suddenly felt that a few powerful auras had surrounded them. Chapter 28-26. A powerful aura emerged in the void without any concealment. It was because any disguise was useless under the situation of the thunder retribution. Even the entire space was shaking. It was as if the entire earth was groaning under the hooves of iron. Space ripples were constantly spreading out. The thunder tribulation was wreaking havoc. Any slight movement could instantly shatter the space. As soon as these powerful auras appeared, it triggered violent fluctuations in the space, as if it was about to collapse in an instant. Yishuan suddenly opened his eyes and stood up amidst these thunder tribulations. These thunder tribulations were also mixed with countless astral winds. Every gust of astral wind could blow away people's bones and flesh. Even a deity would not be able to withstand it. There were also many thunder fires that turned his whole body into a sea of fire. It could burn the hardest metal in the world into a pool of molten iron. However, if someone saw the way he was crossing the thunder retribution at this time, they would be scared to death. These flames, thunder retribution, and astral winds not only could not hurt Yishuan, but they were even devoured by him as he operated the observing person scripture. If an ordinary peak divine king were to absorb these energy rings, his body would be obliterated into atoms, and he would die without a burial place. However, Yishuan was different. The tyrannical gilded tyrant form gave him the most tyrannical confidence. He was crazily absorbing. These thunder retribution flames and astral winds were terrifying, but they were the purest energy. Under normal circumstances, it was possible to encounter them only when he went deep into some dangerous places. Now, they were falling from the sky. This was a kind of danger, but it was also a kind of opportunity. A crisis was like this. It was just that ordinary people did not have the ability to turn the danger into an opportunity. He walked in this thunder retribution sea, turning a blind eye to these threats. Although the tribulation clouds in the sky were terrifying, it was not what he was most afraid of. He could already feel streams of spiritual will sweeping over and landing on his body. He sighed slightly. What should come has come. The news of him crossing the Thunder Retribution had probably spread out in 3 days and 3 nights. Yi Shiwen knew that there were many masters eyeing him covetously outside, but he did not care. This heaven's retribution was much greater than what he initially expected. They should not dare to come in, but he still had to be prepared. The power of lightning flashed everywhere. It was as if this place had become a mystic realm of violent lightning. Yi Shiwen, today is the day of your death. Your heavenly tribulation is so terrifying. Even the heavens want to destroy you. A cold snort came from the depths of the universe. Yi Shiwen saw a figure barging into the Thunder Retribution. Wallalala! In an instant, the power of the lightning tribulation increased by several times, and all of it fell. Yi Shiwen saw that this figure's body was emitting bursts of green smoke. The smoke curled upwards, and then was instantly annihilated. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes. He had not expected this. Even he felt that the intensity of the heavenly tribulation was strenuous. Ordinary quasi-emperors would be courting death if they came in. He had thought that the other party would wait until the heavenly tribulation was over and then launch a surprise attack. Perhaps there would be a chance. Who would have thought that he would just barge in? Is he purposely intensifying the heavenly tribulation? A thought flashed across Yi Shiwen's mind. But I'm afraid it's not worth it to use my life to increase the heavenly tribulation. Once he joined the heavenly tribulation, he would be targeted by the heavenly Tao. It would be useless even if he wanted to escape. The heavenly tribulation would follow him wherever he went. It was not just a matter of making trouble, but a matter of mutual destruction. He did not know who he had offended to make someone want to perish together with him. At this moment, the figure had already rushed in front of Yi Shiwen. Is that a divine shell? Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes and immediately recognized that this was not an ordinary quasi-emperor. Someone had taken over the physical body of this quasi-emperor and launched a surprise attack. He immediately understood that this person wanted to perish together with him. Anyway, it was just a divine shell. Although the loss of abandoning it would be great, it did not matter if it could get rid of him. This divine shell exuded an earth-shattering demonic aura. What a good devil race quasi-emperor. A quasi-emperor of the original devil race. Yi Shiwen's eyes flashed a bit. They really couldn't restrain themselves and attack for the sake of that devil character. Under normal circumstances, it was absolutely impossible to take back the devil character. However, it was different now. He was at his weakest when he was crossing the heavenly tribulation. Nightmare, it's you inside, Yi Shiwen said indifferently. Humph, Yi Shiwen, it doesn't matter who I am. Today is the day you die. The quasi-emperor of the original devil race immediately rushed over. He was unwilling to say a word to Yi Shiwen. He simply wanted to exchange injuries for injuries. As long as Yi Shiwen was injured, the probability of him crossing the heavenly tribulation would be greatly reduced. He would be struck to death by the heavenly tribulation. It doesn't matter. No matter who it is, whoever comes here today must die. Yi Shiwen's eyes narrowed. It did not matter who did it. Under the righteous cause of fighting against the heavenly race, it was impossible for him to make a scene. Moreover, the original devil race was not like the devil eagle race. The devil eagle race was just an ordinary king's sect. At best, it was similar to the Hidden Valley. The original devil race was a genuine emperor's inheritance. It had experienced the change of many emperors in the heavens and stood firm. How could it not have a backup plan? The other emperor's inheritances would not allow him to act recklessly. Nothing was more important than fighting against the heavenly race. That was why they didn't dare to come out in the open. They borrowed a divine shell for their own safety, as well as to fool others. Otherwise, if those old guys were really attracted, and a few old monsters like the Fire Dragon Supreme came, Yi Shiwen might really die here. Of course, this was also not allowed by the Alliance headquarters. Under the situation where both sides had misgivings, this kind of confrontation had become the most direct collision. It seemed like a loss, but it was not certain who would kill who and who would suffer. The value of a quasi-emperor's divine shell is inestimable. Today, I will let you suffer a big loss. Yi Shiwen snorted coldly. A quasi-emperor's divine shell could be said to be priceless. Even among the emperor's inheritances, There were not many of such. It was impossible for an ordinary divine shell to be directly possessed. It was so powerful. It must have gone through countless years of sacrificial training. Losing a divine shell of this level would hurt one's muscles and bones and cause one to spit out a mouthful of old blood. Boom! Yi Shiwen's whole body was burning. Even in the face of such a terrifying heaven's retribution, it was not enough for him to display his true strength. His many years of preparation and amazing strength were naturally not in vain. He stepped on countless thunder tribulations. He held the stone sword in his hand and swung it out. Suddenly, a sword light swept out. Even the thunder tribulations were completely annihilated under his sword light. It was just a simple sword move, but it reflected Yi Shiwen's amazing cultivation and swordsmanship. This was a terrifying realm. At this moment, the original Demon Clan's Quasi-Emperor blasted out a punch. It was none other than the 6 paths of Reincarnation Fist. In the endless thunder tribulations, an incomparably huge 6 paths of reincarnation evolved. It fell towards Yi Shiwen and collided with Yi Shiwen's sword light. Boom! This sound was like the first sound in the universe. It was so powerful that the violent heaven's retribution was about to collapse. The scene of the battle between the two was incomparably terrifying. The first collision was already so shocking. The shock wave that spread out even annihilated the thunder tribulations. It allowed the trembling deities in the distance to clearly see what was happening inside. However, it was better not to see it. After seeing it, it would be even more horrifying. Countless tribulation flames, thunder tribulations, astral winds, and underworld water were absorbed by Yi Shiwen's body. They were used to forge his body. His gilded tyrant form absorbed these energies without any pressure. Many people's pupils shrank when they saw this scene. How terrifying was this quasi-emperor's tribulation? He actually absorbed it. Why didn't his body directly explode? It was simply too shocking. 6 paths of Reincarnation Fist. The corner of Yi Shiwen's mouth curled into a sneer. If one were to talk about comprehension of the 6 paths of Reincarnation Fist, even the top ancestor of the Shura clan could not compare to him. With the addition of the word demon, his comprehension of the 6 paths of Reincarnation Fist had almost reached the sky in a single step. It was directly approaching the great perfection. Unless the Shura Demon King was resurrected, no one could suppress him in this aspect. At this moment, the heavens' retribution in the sky became even more violent. The powerful tribulation flames began to become even more terrifying. The Samadhi True Fire, the Ninine Whitebone Fire, the Western Glaze Fire, and even the Namingli Fire, which was unique to the Phoenix clan, all descended. Even a quasi-emperor would die if he was hit by these flames. It seemed that because of the arrival of this quasi-emperor, the heavens' retribution had become even more terrifying. Many deities gasped. Although they had not seen how terrifying a real quasi-emperor's retribution was, it was obvious that it was absolutely not this terrifying. Just these tribulation flames alone could probably destroy countless worlds. They did not know whether the end of the world or the destruction of the heavenly Tao would be so terrifying. However, at the same time, they also understood one thing. The more terrifying the heavens' retribution was, the more terrifying the person in front of them was. There was no doubt that his strength had surpassed the peak divine king level. In fact, his strength had even surpassed the quasi-emperor level. At the same time, once he succeeded in transcending the heavens' retribution, his strength would also become even more terrifying. They were afraid that he would really be invincible. However, just as the thunder's retribution was about to spread throughout the space again, countless flames suddenly leaped out of Yi Shiwen's body. This was the Namingli Fire. At this moment, the Namingli Fire transformed into a huge phoenix. This huge phoenix leaped out of Yi Shiwen's body and soared into the sky. The falling tribulation flames were all absorbed by it. Chapter 28-27. This fire phoenix soared in the void and continued to absorb the thunder fire. Moreover, its strength was also improving at an astonishing speed because of the continuous absorption of the thunder fire. The Nanming mythical fire was leveling up at an astonishing speed. The Nanming mythical fire was almost the natural magical ability of the phoenix race. Except for some special phoenixes, the vast majority of phoenixes could use the Nanming mythical fire, but these Nanming mythical fires were also divided into different levels. The difference between the Nanming mythical fire released by a young phoenix and a quasi-emperor phoenix was like heaven and earth. Yi Shiwen's body had been transformed invisibly to the point where he could nurture the Nanming mythical fire because of the phoenix regeneration technique. It was similar to the phoenix race. However, the Nanming mythical fire wasn't able to display its full power in Yi Shiwen's hands compared to other magical martial arts. It wasn't that the Nanming mythical fire wasn't powerful enough. In the past, the Phoenix ancestor had relied on the Nanming mythical fire to become invincible in the world. It had burned an emperor of the sky race to death. This magical power was naturally tyrannical. However, Yi Shiwen rarely used it on his own initiative. It wasn't that he didn't want to use it, but this magical power was different from the 6 paths of reincarnation fist and other martial arts. The power of this magical power would naturally be greatly enhanced as long as one could comprehend it and use it. The Nanming mythical fire required one to comprehend the fire attribute law, but the key was to nurture it. Nurture the Nanming mythical fire. This was the basic condition for practicing the martial arts of the earth, fire, water, wind, and other laws. With such a magical power, one could become an expert even if one didn't practice it. The more one nurtured, the stronger one would become. This was why so many experts of the dragon race could greatly increase their strength after a nap while the human race was desperately practicing and comprehending. This had nothing to do with aptitude. It only depended on time. Whether it was the dragon race or the phoenix race, even if they hadn't reached the Tao realm, their lifespan was so long that it made the short-lived human race envious and jealous. Therefore, as long as one was born in these two races, they would naturally grow into an expert even if they didn't practice. However, everything had its pros and cons. It was precisely because of this that the experts of the Phoenix clan in the ancient Phoenix realm needed to rely on a long period of time to nurture them. It was absolutely impossible for them to become experts in a short period of time. Therefore, they developed many corresponding martial arts. Even if the Nanming leaf fire couldn't be mastered in a short period of time, they could still possess great strength. Otherwise, the Phoenix clan would be able to dominate the world just by relying on the mastered Nanming leaf fire. What martial arts, what divine abilities, what laws? They were all burned up, directly burned to death, incomparably domineering. Back then, the Phoenix ancestor used this strategy, becoming invincible. She was different from the later imperial monarchs. The ancestral dragon, Phoenix ancestor, and the others were divine spirits nurtured by the heavens and the earth, the first living beings in the world. They were born different from the masses. Although there was no conclusion as to who was stronger or weaker among the enemy troops, it was publicly acknowledged that the first batch of monarchs were generally stronger than the later ones. It was just like how an ordinary human wouldn't be a match for a dragon in the same realm. However, this also included a monster like Yi Shiwen. Of course, there must be some means in the ancient Phoenix realm that could make the Nanming leaf fire grow rapidly. However, it should be a privilege that only a few people could enjoy. Yi Shiwen was the son-in-law of the ancient Phoenix realm, but his relationship with them wasn't very good. So, he didn't expect the ancient Phoenix realm to open up these resources to him. He wouldn't have such an opportunity on ordinary days. However, the heaven's retribution had given him such an opportunity. It didn't matter what kind of strange flame it was. He would absorb it all and let his Nanming leaf fire grow. This was something that others could see, but couldn't do. If others absorbed the heaven's retribution flame like this, their bodies would explode and they would die. Even Yi Shiwen couldn't bear it. However, he had the time robe on his body now. The power of time was constantly flowing out of it, and his body had been destroyed to a complete mess. So, time had reversed, and his body had been restored to its peak. This ability was simply in defiance of the natural order. Yi Shiwen could maintain his peak state at all times in conjunction with the Phoenix regeneration technique. Therefore, he dared to carry out such a crazy plan. Facts had proven that Yi Shiwen's strategy was correct. His Nanmingli fire had grown at an astonishing speed after it had continuously absorbed other strange flames. At the same time, his mysterious space was also crazily absorbing these energies and analyzing the fire attribute principles. This had allowed Yi Shiwen's understanding of the fire attribute principles to rise gradually. It was comparable to the understanding of boxing and swordsmanship in martial arts. Of course, the Emperor's source was being consumed gradually in contrast to this. Even Yi Shiwen, who was a local tyrant, felt his heart twitching at this speed of consumption. However, he immediately suppressed this heartache. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It was impossible to have such a good opportunity under normal circumstances. So, where could he find so many strange flames of the heavens' retribution flame? Everyone who saw this scene couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. In the eyes of ordinary people, this was simply a matter of life and death. However, Yi Shiwen's body was actually growing. He was taking advantage of this opportunity to absorb the heterogeneous flame. Isn't he afraid of being struck by lightning? He is actually using the heavens' retribution flame to grow. A deity couldn't help but blurt out, "He has already been struck by lightning." The other deities couldn't help but ridicule. Yi Shiwen was simply a monster. In their opinion, this kind of behavior was simply subverting their worldview. This was not a human at all. He was simply rushing out of the earth. The original demon clan's quasi-emperor opposite him was also a little dumbfounded. Although he had already prepared himself for this and knew that Yi Shiwen was not an ordinary divine king, he didn't expect that he would be so abnormal. Die! The original demon clan's quasi-emperor roared and directly pounced. 6 paths of reincarnation fist. His 6 paths of reincarnation disc condensed on the spot and blasted down again. He had already understood that Yi Shiwen was growing. Although he didn't know how Yi Shiwen was doing it, he understood that he couldn't let Yi Shiwen continue to grow. Otherwise, it would be even more difficult to deal with him in the future. Boom! This punch was easily caught by Yi Shiwen. A slight smile appeared on his face. The 6 paths of reincarnation fist had been directly disintegrated. He had used his understanding of the 6 paths of reincarnation fist to disintegrate the opponent's attack almost without any loss. How long do you all want to watch? Are you really going to wait until he absorbs the heavenly tribulation flames and becomes stronger before you are killed? At this time, the original demon clan's quasi-emperor roared, obviously calling the others to attack. At this time, the super experts who were hiding in the dark appeared one after another. All of them were super experts of the quasi-emperor level. There were celestial race, demon race, and even human race and monster race. Without exception, all of them were powerful experts of the quasi-emperor level. Yi Shiwen looked over and saw that there were almost 20 powerful quasi-emperors. Most of them were in the divine shell realm. They were the same as the original demon clan quasi-emperor from before. They had also concealed their identities and came here personally. Therefore, it didn't mean that the human race had any forces to attack, and the monster race didn't mean that the monster race had intervened. This made it difficult to distinguish between the real and the fake. There were also some who simply came in person, but one could see the strong death aura on their bodies at a glance. It was obvious that they had suffered serious injuries that couldn't be treated and were determined to die. They had come to kill Yi Shiwen. In other words, these were almost one-time consumables. After this battle, they would die even if they didn't die. Under the baptism of the heavenly tribulation, even the quasi-emperor's divine shell would be destroyed and could no longer be used. After all, not everyone was like Yi Shiwen, who had the double insurance of the time magic robe and the phoenix regeneration technique. How generous! Yi Shiwen laughed heartily. How many people had he offended in the past? These quasi-emperor divine shells and old quasi-emperors who were on the verge of death were not something that an ordinary force could afford. With the quasi-emperor overseeing the sect, the status of a Regis sect had already surpassed that of an ordinary Regis sect. Who would be willing to send so many people to kill Yi Shiwen unless it was a critical moment? You really think highly of me. Although he had expected it, Yi Shiwen still felt a little surprised when he saw so many quasi-emperors appear. Then, he mocked himself a little. He really wasn't just a normal kind of annoying. Did this human named Yi Shiwen offend the whole world? A god said in shock. He couldn't imagine how terrifying the situation would be if he was in Yi Shiwen's shoes and so many quasi-emperors personally came to kill him. He was scared to death just thinking about it. They had been sleeping for a long time, at least tens of thousands of years, at most hundreds of thousands of years. This name was too unfamiliar to them. Someone who could cultivate to the peak of divine king. Even if they had been sleeping for tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, would not be unheard of. Could it be that he grew up in these tens of thousands of years? What they didn't know was that Yi Shiwen did not grow up in tens of thousands of years, but thousands of years. Therefore, these old antiques who had been sleeping for many years did not know of Yi Shiwen's existence at all. But even if they didn't know what kind of existence Yi Shiwen was, they could understand that he was not an ordinary person. These gods unanimously decided that if he could survive, they must put him on the list of people that should not be provoked. He was definitely an existence that would run away the moment they saw him. It was too terrifying. Yi Shiwen, this day next year will be the anniversary of your death. You'd better obediently accept the surrender, lest you suffer more. A quasi-emperor in the depths of the darkness said gloomily. The countless heavenly tribulations washed down and all fell on his body, but he didn't care. This time, he was determined to sacrifice everything to eliminate Yi Shiwen. Yes, die. Die. Every one of these quasi-emperors roared. And at this moment, in the tribulation clouds above the sky, the power of thunder began to change. An army of lightning people formed out of thin air, bringing a strong sense of oppression. It was almost like a pincer attack. Chapter 28:28. The heavenly retribution and these quasi-emperors formed a pincer attack to kill him in one fell swoop. These quasi-emperors also noticed the lightning army in the sky. It made their hearts tremble. This Yi Shiwen was so strong that it defied the heavens. Only the heavens would bestow such a heavenly punishment upon him. Of course, the reason why the heavenly retribution became like this was also related to their own intervention. As everyone knew, the more people who participated in the heavenly retribution, the more terrifying it would become. These people broken alone. Even if they couldn't kill him, they might let him be killed by the heavenly retribution. Yi Shiwen, obediently accept your death. The original demon clan quasi-emperor grinned and directly rushed towards Yi Shiwen. In addition to him, more than a dozen other quasi-emperors also rushed over. They didn't want to wait for the lightning army to accumulate their strength and attack. This was because this lightning army not only wanted to kill Yi Shiwen, but they also wanted to deal with him. Yi Shiwen could come and go freely in these heavenly retribution, but if it was them, it would not be so easy. They could ignore the heavenly retribution now because they were burning their chi and blood. It was as if they had drunk stimulants. If they continued to delay, they would definitely be killed by the heavenly retribution. Yi Shiwen naturally understood what they were thinking. This was also in line with Yi Shiwen's intentions. He also didn't want to delay until the lightning army attacked. Whoosh! Behind Yi Shiwen, the demon wings suddenly opened. His entire body was like a ball of light, shuttling through the endless heavenly retribution. In an instant, he rushed in front of a Tian clan quasi-emperor. 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Yi Shiwen slightly sneered and directly blasted his fist, directly hitting his chest on the spot. The Tian clan quasi-emperor completely didn't expect Yi Shiwen's speed to be so fast. He actually tore apart the heavenly retribution in an instant. Without causing space-time to collapse, he appeared in front of him. Bang! The Tian clan quasi-emperor let out a muffled groan, and his entire body was instantly sent flying. Yi Shiwen's movements were straightforward, and the power was even more amazing. The Tian clan quasi-emperor directly spat out a mouthful of blood, and his spirit was almost beaten out. Yi Shiwen had no intention of letting him off the hook. His figure flickered, and he chased after him. At the same time, a shocking mass of sword intent appeared in his hand. It was none other than the sovereign sword intent. Clang! The will of the sovereign lord's sword continued to descend, growing larger and larger until, finally, it slammed into the ground, ripping a huge rift in the sky. Boom! With an incomparably loud explosion, the sword light ruthlessly landed on the body of the Tian clan quasi-emperor. A huge mushroom cloud slowly rose up, setting off a shockwave that directly annihilated countless lightning bolts, tribulation flames, astral winds, and so on. The body of the entire Tian clan quasi-emperor, which was even harder than the hardest metal, directly scattered in all directions, splitting into pieces. One of the primordial spirits leaped out and was about to escape into the depths of the void. This was the spirit that was hidden in this divine shell. He was already scared out of his wits. Yi Shiwen's series of attacks were too straightforward. He didn't make any unnecessary movements. He didn't even use any superfluous principles. There wasn't any gorgeous scene. He was killed by a simple punch and a sword strike. Even his body that had been tempered and strengthened was utterly unable to endure it, and it collapsed on the spot. What? This is impossible. The gods who were watching from outside were almost scared out of their wits when they saw this scene. They were almost scared to death. Yi Shiwen had killed a powerful Tian clan quasi-emperor with just a punch and a sword strike. How could they not be terrified? Originally, they were wondering how many forces Yi Shiwen had offended to be targeted by so many Tian clan quasi-emperors. Now, they finally understood that it wasn't that those people had overestimated Yi Shiwen, but that Yi Shiwen was indeed that terrifying. A Tian clan quasi-emperor is like a chicken in his hands. He can strangle him to death just like that. A god said in a trembling voice, "You still want to leave? Those who came to kill me today, don't even think about leaving." Yi Shiwen actually had no intention of letting them go. He took a step forward, and his whole body seemed to have transformed into a sharp sword. He slashed down on the spot, directly tearing the heaven and earth apart, and instantly landed on the spirit. Ah! There was only a scream, and this wisp of spirit was blasted apart. There was also a cold snort coming from the depths of the void. In the void crack that Yi Shiwen had opened, a figure was faintly discernible. It was the original owner of this spirit. His body was exuding a powerful aura, and he was an incomparably powerful Tian clan quasi-emperor. In fact, his strength was even more tyrannical than that of the Tian clan quasi-emperor's divine shell. He should have the strength of a late Tian clan quasi-emperor. In order to deal with Yi Shiwen, not only had a Tian clan quasi-emperor's divine shell been dispatched, but it was also personally controlled by a late Tian clan quasi-emperor expert. One could imagine how much they had paid. Even so, they still couldn't escape the fate of being killed by Yi Shiwen. How dare you? When the Tian clan quasi-emperor saw that Yi Shiwen had not only killed his spirit avatar, but also had the intention of pulling him out from the layers of space, he suddenly flew into a rage. He was so angry that he slapped the space passage and collapsed it. However, he himself didn't come in. Once a person like him came in, the heaven tribulation would become different, and even he himself would die under the heaven tribulation. Yi Shiwen, don't be insolent. Eat our attack. Just as Yi Shiwen killed the fleeing primordial spirit, suddenly, the other quasi-emperors had already rushed over to kill him. A torrent of martial arts swept out. Unexpectedly, had a feeling that he would be completely submerged. Rumble! A series of explosions sounded, and the shock waves swept in all directions. Countless spaces collapsed instantly, and the chaotic chi also rushed in, colliding with the heaven tribulation. Was it successful? A Tian clan quasi-emperor widened his eyes, trying to see through the turbulence formed by the shock waves. No, it wasn't successful. The tribulation clouds in the sky haven't dispersed. It wasn't successful at all. A Tian clan quasi-emperor immediately reacted. If Yi Shiwen had been killed, then the tribulation clouds in the sky should have dispersed immediately. However, it didn't, which meant that Yi Shiwen should be fine. But just as his voice fell, he saw a figure jump out from the endless turbulence of energy. He saw Yi Shiwen flapping his devil wings behind him, and instantly rushed in front of him. A big hand suddenly grabbed over. Boom! His face was slapped by Yi Shiwen, and his whole body was instantly sent flying like a meteor. His whole face was shattered, and he was seriously injured by Yi Shiwen in an instant. Yi Shiwen's devil wings were still emitting bursts of light of the laws of time and space. Just now, Yi Shiwen had relied on the devil wings to wrap himself up and block all the attacks. Go to hell! Yi Shiwen sneered. He spread out his hands like a longbow, and a light arrow took shape in his hands. Swish! An arrow shot out, and suddenly the arrow light was like a long dragon, breaking through the universe, and directly shot the body of the Tian clan quasi-emperor. Boom! The Tian clan quasi-emperor screamed, and his whole body was shot, instantly torn apart, and his spirit was destroyed. Everyone was still in shock. Was he still human? How could he be so tyrannical? It was simply unbelievable. With just one arrow, he killed another powerful Tian clan quasi-emperor. Yi Shiwen's body was flowing with seven-colored light, which faintly looked like an armor. It was the time robe. Yi Shiwen deepened the power of the time robe, and it was unknown how much stronger his attack strength was. They were afraid that the lightning army of the heavenly retribution would suddenly descend, and Yi Shiwen was also afraid that the lightning army would suddenly descend and disrupt his rhythm. So he had to take advantage of the situation to wipe them out. If it was in normal times, these two attacks would be enough to intimidate these Tian clan quasi-emperors. But at this time, these Tian clan quasi-emperors had already decided to die, so it didn't scare them. Instead, it made them even crazier. Swish! A long whip swept out like a chaotic dragon, and everywhere it passed, it brought out countless chaotic chi and shot out billions of rays of light and fiercely slashed towards Yi Shiwen. This was the original demon clan quasi-emperor. A long whip appeared in his hand, and like a long dragon, it swept across and split the sky. Yi Shiwen took a step forward, without the slightest fear. In the sky, the heavenly retribution continued to fall, and behind him, the fire phoenix was still frantically devouring the flames. The sword light in Yi Shiwen's hand directly collided with the long whip. Bang! A loud and clear sound of collision was heard. This original demon clan quasi-emperor was evenly matched with Yi Shiwen, and his face revealed an abnormal redness. Although he had forcibly blocked Yi Shiwen's attack, it had still caused huge damage and injuries to him. This made the blood in his body tumble unceasingly, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. However, the more powerful devil blood in his body began to burn, so not only was he not defeated by Yi Shiwen, but he also became stronger. This was a kind of crazy technique. The more serious the injury, the stronger the limit of power that he could erupt in a short period of time, and this was the biggest thing he could rely on today. Swish! The original demon clan quasi-emperor forcibly swallowed a mouthful of blood, but the long whip in his hand didn't slow down in the slightest. All kinds of whip techniques were at his fingertips, and all of them were peerless martial arts, and they covered Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen didn't dodge, nor did he evade, and directly rushed forward. He didn't worry at all with the time robe on his body, and directly fought with all his might. It could be said that he was invincible. On the other side, this original demon clan quasi-emperor was even more ferocious. The more serious the injury, the more devil blood in his body would burn, and the stronger his strength would become. From the beginning, he couldn't resist at all, but now he was evenly matched with Yi Shiwen. This was simply blinding everyone's dog eyes. Whether it was Yi Shiwen or this original demon clan quasi-emperor, both were equally terrifying. Chapter 28-29. The chaos was torn apart by the two of them. The boundless tribulation rain in the sky was getting stronger and stronger, but the two of them didn't care at all. Bang! 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 The battle between the two of them became more and more intense. The other quasi-emperors could only surround the two of them, and had no way to intervene. Yi Shiwen's strength was too terrifying. He was already above the ordinary intermediate quasi-emperor. Moreover, he had the protection of the time magic robe, which made him even more powerful and invincible. He wasn't afraid of the influence of the heavenly tribulation. As for his combat strength, everyone had seen it with their own eyes. He easily killed a quasi-emperor in seconds. such combat strength. If it was in normal times, they would immediately turn around and run away, absolutely not daring to stay. However, it was different now. They were already determined to fight to the death with him. The quasi-emperor of the original demon clan was fighting with his own life. It wasn't something that ordinary people could imitate. Moreover, they didn't have such a martial technique. They could only continue to attack Yi Shiwen from the side. Unfortunately, the time magic robe on Yi Shiwen's body was too strong. This level of sneak attacks couldn't break through Yi Shiwen's defense. Yi Shiwen's sword energy crisscrossed and broke the chaos. The chaos energy couldn't even linger around his body. It was incomparably terrifying. He had used many exquisite sword arts just now. However, he was only using the basic sword technique now. He had only used one sword move after another. It was simple and direct. However, its might was extremely terrifying. The quasi-emperor of the original demon clan could only clench his teeth and fight with Yi Shiwen. Even so, he was constantly at a disadvantage in the collisions with Yi Shiwen. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth like it was free. His internal organs were smashed into pieces in the fierce collisions. However, his terrifying martial technique was forcibly supporting him, allowing him to maintain his amazing combat strength. I'd like to see to what extent you can persist. Yi Shiwen sneered. Then, another powerful and heavy move fiercely blasted down. Bang! The quasi-emperor of the original demon race was sent flying on the spot. He spat out a mouthful of blood and many pieces of his internal organs. He was seriously injured, and many of the bones in his body were also broken in this one blow. Although he wasn't directly hit by Yi Shiwen's attack, the dreadful power had completely fallen on his body, making him feel as if his body was going to collapse. The expression of the quasi-emperor of the original demon race did not change in the slightest. His eyes were incomparably cold and flickered with a crazed expression. His eyes were filled with a desolate expression, as though he was not a living person. No, he was a dead object that had just been taken over by someone else. Countless tyrannical demon laws interweaved around his body, making him seem like a demon lord. His counterattack was also very crazy. Yi Shiwen, even if I die, I will drag you down with me. Die in the heavenly tribulation. Ha 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 ha. This quasi-emperor of the original demon clan had an incomparably crazy expression on his face. He was constantly being injured by Yi Shiwen, but his aura didn't weaken in the slightest. On the contrary, it continued to rise. It had the power to swallow mountains and rivers. Yi Shiwen's expression didn't change in the slightest. He just slashed with his sword without the slightest bit of fancy moves, but he had already turned the sword principle into his own. It was extremely terrifying. In such a confrontation, the old quasi-emperor of the original demon clan kept retreating, blood splashing all over his body. All kinds of murderous intentions merged into one, turning into an eternal sword intention, and slashed out from the tip of Yi Shiwen's sword. Boom! The sword intention fiercely hit the body of the quasi-emperor of the original demon clan. Poochie, a huge flower of blood splashed out. The chest of the quasi-emperor of the original demon clan was smashed, and a huge hole was opened on the spot. However, his aura was extremely strong. Blood splashed all over his body, and his muscles were on the verge of being ruptured by the powerful force. He let out a loud roar, and the primordial chaos was shaking. The quasi-emperor of the original demon clan had gone crazy, but Yi Shiwen was still firmly suppressing him. All kinds of sword aura crisscrossed and broke the primordial chaos. All kinds of heavenly tribulations were slashed down by him. His body was covered with golden light, and he was like an ancient sword god, looking down on everyone with disdain. Suppress for me, overturning the heaven seal, 3 seals into 1. Yi Shiwen let out a loud roar and flipped his hand to form a seal. Then, he blasted it towards the quasi-emperor of the original demon clan. The crazed quasi-emperor of the original demon clan was blasted away on the spot, and his imposing aura was also dispersed by this blow. All the bones in his body were completely broken, and blood was spurting out from every pore of his body. Dominate the world. Yi Shiwen let out another loud roar, and the stone sword in his hand began to boil. Then, the sword suddenly smashed down. Yi Shiwen seemed to be the sole ruler of the world. It seemed as if the shocking scene of his ascension to the throne had appeared, and he had crushed all his opponents. Bang! The body of the quasi-emperor of the original demon clan exploded, and turned into a blood mist that filled the sky. The primordial spirit had been destroyed in an instant. The primordial spirit of the quasi-emperor of the original demon clan had entered the divine shell of the quasi-emperor. The primordial spirit wasn't that powerful. So, the rest of the quasi-emperor would have nowhere to escape once the divine shell was split by Yi Shiwen. They couldn't withstand Yi Shiwen's sword. Rumble! The physical body of the quasi-emperor of the original demon clan exploded like a huge nuclear bomb exploding in the universe. Even the heaven's retribution was annihilated by this shockwave. Countless deities outside were dumbfounded, but at the same time, they couldn't take their eyes off the battle. They didn't want to give up watching such a battle for even a moment. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for them. Under normal circumstances, they wouldn't have the opportunity to see a quasi-emperor level expert fight. Kill him. I don't believe that he can block all of us by himself. The quasi-emperor of the original demon clan was killed by Yi Shiwen's sword, but it didn't frighten the other quasi-emperors. Instead, it stimulated their killing intent. He was already so terrifying even before crossing the heaven's retribution. If he was allowed to cross the heaven's retribution, then he would be invincible. This was something they absolutely couldn't allow to happen. They rushed forward one after another. The charging momentum of more than a dozen quasi-emperors was so terrifying that it almost shook the heaven and earth. It was as if thousands of troops and horses were charging forward. Yi Shiwen didn't delay in the slightest. After grabbing all the flesh and blood of the quasi-emperors in his hand, the huge fire phoenix behind him suddenly flew up, and then turned into countless small fire phoenixes in the void, flying towards the quasi-emperors. Ah! The screams of these quasi-emperors suddenly rose and fell. They were all hit by these fire phoenixes on the spot, and their bodies began to burn. Originally, it was impossible for flames to burn their indestructible bodies. But now, they were burning, and their bodies began to burn at a speed visible to the naked eye. "What kind of flame is this?" a quasi-emperor exclaimed. "Nanming mythical fire. It's Nanming mythical fire. Damn it. How can this Nanming mythical fire be so powerful?" They immediately felt a threat from the origin of life. They naturally knew about the Nanming mythical fire of the Phoenix clan, but the Nanming mythical fire used by ordinary phoenixes was actually not much of a threat, at least for experts of their level. This was indeed the case. But they didn't expect Yi Shiwen's Nanming mythical fire to be so terrifying. At this time, they remembered that Yi Shiwen was still devouring the mythical fire in the heaven's retribution just now. But even so, it shouldn't have become so powerful all of a sudden. This was simply a bug. They had completely underestimated the power of the Nanming mythical fire. This Nanming mythical fire not only burned their bodies, but also their spirit. When their weak spirit faced the Nanming mythical fire, it was like they had met their nemesis, and they couldn't exert much of their strength. Ah! 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 They screamed continuously, and these quasi-emperors no longer cared about their demeanor. They rolled on the ground in the midst of the thunder tribulation. However, the Nanming fire was like maggots in a tarsal bone, nailing them tightly. No matter how hard they tried to extinguish it, it was useless. Their bodies turned into a sea. These quasi-emperors had instantly condensed the laws of water and created these seawater out of thin air. However, it was useless. The seawater had just appeared when it was evaporated by the Nanming fire. It could not even slow down the burning of the seawater. Yi Shiwen stood in midair with his hands behind his back. His ears were filled with the screams of these quasi-emperors, but his expression was cold and unmoved. From the beginning, all those who joined the ranks of those who besieged him had to die. Yi Shiwen sneered slightly, and his expression immediately returned to indifference. He looked up at the sky, where the lightning army had already formed and was ready to sweep the world. Fight with him. Even if I die, I will drag you down with me. These quasi-emperors were completely crazy. They would rather fight with Yi Shiwen than be burned alive like this. This way, there would be a chance of survival. These quasi-emperors desperately rushed toward Yi Shiwen, forming a pincer attack. All of their attacks erupted in an instant. You're courting death. Do you think you can overturn the heavens with just these few people? Yi Shiwen shouted and directly rushed out to attack. He stretched out his palm and directly covered the face of a screaming quasi-emperor. Boom! A sword light burst out from Yi Shiwen's palm and instantly exploded the quasi-emperor's head. He was killed in an instant. His primordial spirit was completely destroyed. Boom! 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 Yi Shiwen's attack speed was extremely fast. Under the heaven's retribution, his body seemed to transform into thousands of figures. In just a few breaths, these quasi-emperors who had been seriously injured by the Nanming mythical fire were all killed. Fast. Their speed was simply too fast. Before the deities could even see what had happened, those quasi-emperors had already died. After all, they were only divine shells or were severely injured quasi-emperors. Their battle prowess could not be compared to their peak state. Rumble! At this time, the countless lightning army in the sky pounced down. Chapter 28:30. Just when Yi Shiwen was about to annihilate those quasi-emperors one by one, the lightning army in the sky finally finished their preparations and pounced down. In the blink of an eye, they had already arrived. Their speed was extremely fast. Almost the entire army teleported over and directly pounced in front of Yi Shiwen. Bang! Yi Shiwen instantly attacked. His punch was like a dragon, piercing through the void and penetrating through several lightning men in one breath. It directly turned into a ball of lightning energy and exploded. Then, it was swallowed by the time robe on Yi Shiwen's body. Although this ball of lightning energy contained the power to destroy the world and was enough to crush the stars, it could not hurt the time robe in the slightest. A Dao tool was a life weapon refined by an emperor. It was rare in the world. It could replenish part of the consumption of the time robe. Although it was undoubtedly insignificant compared to the emperor source, it could also reduce the consumption of Yi Shiwen's emperor source. This was the strategy of using war to sustain war. Yi Shiwen did not have the slightest intention of letting out a sigh of relief after destroying several lightning men with one punch. On the contrary, his face became even more solemn. This was because almost all of these lightning men had the strength of a god king. There was even no lack of god king peak existences among them. If it was just one or two, it would not be a problem. It would only take a moment to settle it. However, when this army was composed of such existences, the situation was completely different. No matter how powerful a quasi-emperor was, in the face of such a situation, he would have to kneel. The strength of a quasi-emperor was completely above that of a god king. Ordinary hundreds of god kings were not a match for a quasi-emperor. However, when this number was multiplied by 100 or 1,000 times, even a quasi-emperor would have to kneel. The number was so large that it was enough to drown a quasi-emperor. Even the heaven race, which dominated the world, could not assemble such a terrifying god-king army. Only the heavenly Tao was possible. This had already exceeded the limit of an ordinary peak god-king who was crossing the quasi-emperor tribulation. Originally, it would not have evolved to this extent. However, after the participation of 20 quasi-emperors, the heavens tribulation had mutated to a terrifying extent. This was the price of 20 quasi-emperors. They wanted to bury Yi Shiwen. It was really a huge capital. Even if it was an emperor lord's legacy, if this was done, the entire legacy would be crippled. At this time, Yi Shiwen had no other choice. Previously, he didn't care about the heavenly tribulation, but now he couldn't be like this. Fortunately, this was also one of the results he had expected, so he didn't panic at this time. After all, there were only a few methods that could threaten him. Boom! Countless streaks of seven-colored light immediately erupted around him. They turned into the power of time and swept out in all directions. The power of time killed several dozen god kings in a single moment. Bang! 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 Yi Shiwen attacked like lightning. With the protection of the time robe, he didn't need to worry about the lightning army's attacks for the time being. Instead, he could focus wholeheartedly on attacking. His techniques were also astonishing. Whether it was the Sovereign Lord's sword intent, the 6 paths of reincarnation fist, or the overturning heaven seal, they were all extremely powerful martial arts and were invincible. Wherever he passed, the lightning army would be annihilated. The power of the time robe had also risen to the extreme. In addition to the lightning energy that was being swallowed, the Emperor's source was also being consumed at an astonishing speed. The lightning army was annihilated in Yi Shiwen's hands. However, more lightning army was still gathering. The entry of these quasi-emperors had already raised the standard of Yi Shiwen's heavenly tribulation by several levels. These lightning army were even more fearless. In fact, they didn't even have any emotions. They only had martial arts instincts left. They didn't care about defense at all, and all of them rushed towards Yi Shiwen's weaknesses. The collision between the two sides was like a reef island in the middle of the sea. It was constantly being attacked by the sea. Every wave of impact seemed to be submerged, and it could no longer be seen. However, every wave of the sea was smashed on the reef and couldn't pose a fatal threat to the reef itself. Such a battle dazzled the gods. It was unimaginably powerful. Whether it was the endless army of divine kings in the sky, or Yi Shiwen fighting against the heavens alone, it was something that they didn't dare to imagine. Before this, they had never dreamt that there would be such a battle. Yi Shiwen seemed to be swallowed alive by these divine kings at any time. However, the frequency of his attacks didn't change at all. He was like a robot, constantly attacking, and every attack didn't show the slightest sign of decadence. Compared to the endless army of divine kings, Yi Shiwen was more terrifying to them. The heavenly Tao was boundless. These gods, who claimed to have jumped out of the 3 realms and didn't belong to the 5 elements, also understood that they had only broken free from some of the shackles. Except for the legendary emperor, no one could really break free from the shackles of the heavenly Tao. The power and mystery of the heavenly Tao wasn't something that they could explore to the limit. The appearance of such an army of divine kings was shocking, but it wasn't strange. However, Yi Shiwen, who could fight against such an army without falling into a disadvantageous position, really made them feel like they were blind. This wasn't a living creature at all, but a monster in human skin. At this time, they finally somewhat understood why so many quasi-emperors would rather die than to kill this human called Yi Shiwen. It was because he was really too strong. Such a person, no matter who it was, would be regarded as a serious threat. Sometimes being too weak was a sin, and being too strong was also a sin. And this human in front of them clearly belonged to the latter. The battle was still going on fiercely, and from time to time, there were lightning men who were punched to death by Yi Shiwen's sword. All the rules had disappeared, and only the naked confrontation of violence was left. Everyone seemed to see countless waves smashing on the submerged reef. It was unparalleled. However, this wasn't the final attack, and it wasn't the most terrifying attack yet. At this time, the figure of a knight appeared above the heavenly tribulation clouds. This knight was wearing lightning armor, and his face was blurred, making it impossible to see what he looked like. However, the powerful power released from his body made everyone feel a kind of fear from the depths of their souls, even though they were thousands of miles away. Quasi-Emperor. A quasi-emperor had appeared among the lightning men. Many gods couldn't help but hold their breath, and their eyes widened. Although they had seen the amazing scene of Yi Shiwen killing a quasi-emperor in seconds, that quasi-emperor was different from the lightning man quasi-emperor. Those quasi-emperors entered the heavenly tribulation, causing it to upgrade. In addition to Yi Shiwen being tricked, they also had to bear the attack of this upgraded heavenly tribulation. But this lightning man quasi-emperor was different. He didn't have to bear the attack of the heavenly tribulation and could exert 100% of his strength, and even 200% of his strength was possible. Nay! The lightning man's warhorse roared and directly swooped down. In just a flash, it swooped from thousands of miles away in front of Yi Shiwen from the tribulation clouds. Fast, 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 clang! The lightning spear shot out in an instant, directly in front of Yi Shiwen like a mountain range, not giving him the slightest chance to react. Compared to those lightning men of God King level, it was much more tyrannical. Bang! The moment when the spear was about to explode Yi Shiwen's head, he raised his hand to block this spear. The violent collision waves instantly swept out, and the surging energy tide had already blasted the nearby lightning men who were rushing over. This lightning man's spearhead was smashed by Yi Shiwen's palm, but it instantly reorganized itself and shot out the spear at an even more astonishing speed. The spear was like a dragon, and the sky was filled with starlight. Yi Shiwen's reaction wasn't slow at all. It wasn't the first time he had dealt with these lightning men, and he naturally understood that the most terrifying thing about these lightning men was their amazing recovery power. They didn't have a physical body, and this was a huge weakness in some aspects. However, this was also a huge advantage in other aspects, as they could quickly regenerate. For ordinary gods, a serious injury was equally fatal, but it was nothing for these lightning men, because for them, there was really no such thing as a fatal weakness, and they could only be destroyed with absolute tyrannical power. World domination. Yi Shiwen roared, and the sword light on his body became faster, and fiercely slashed out at lightning speed. Bang! There was a huge roar, and it was another powerful collision. The lightning man's entire spear was smashed. Without a physical body, it was very difficult for him to confront Yi Shiwen head-on, but he recovered in an instant and was even more difficult to deal with. Again, Yi Shiwen shouted and took the initiative to attack, not giving him any chance to breathe, and slashed down with his sword again. The sword in tension crossed the sky, and it seemed as if it was going to split the entire heaven in half. Rumble! A huge mushroom cloud slowly rose up, and the energy shock wave rolled out in all directions, annihilating countless lightning men of God King level. These gods who were far away felt the void under their feet trembling, and couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. If such an attack were to fall on them, wouldn't it be terrible? Wouldn't they die without a burial place? Too strong, too terrifying. Is this the fight of Quasi-Emperor level? This is too strong, and even the Lightning Man Quasi-Emperor is not a match for him. Countless shock waves had yet to dissipate, and more than a dozen figures condensed above the heavenly tribulation. Without exception, all of them were terrifying Quasi-Emperor level existences. There were swordsmen, machete men, spellcasters, and archers. These people exuded a terrifying aura, and it made people feel goosebumps all over their bodies. Swish! The moment the figure formed, the archer Quasi-Emperor shot an arrow directly at Yi Shiwen. Chapter 28:31. The long arrow broke through the sky, broke through the chaos, and directly rushed into the energy shock wave. Boom! An even larger mushroom cloud rushed up. The entire sky was trembling, and the galaxy was being annihilated, collapsing at a speed visible to the naked eye. This arrow seemed to have shot out the laws of nature. It was incomparably sharp, sweeping away everything in its path. This arrow was more terrifying than the previous attack, and it made people tremble. But the gods watching the battle from afar were very clear that Yi Shiwen, who was shot, did not die. The heavens' retribution in the sky did not disperse, and it was further intensified and fermented. This was the biggest proof. They all widened their eyes, but saw that after this attack, those quasi-emperors rushed into the incomparably dazzling shock wave, and a more intense battle broke out. Their divine thoughts could not see what was happening inside. All the divine thoughts that probed into it were completely annihilated in the end. What kind of terrifying battle was this? Could someone cross the retribution so fiercely? These gods finally understood why some people could never catch up with them. Just looking at the scene of the retribution, it might be a scene that they could never see again in their lifetime. Whoosh! 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 A few figures rushed out of the shockwave. It was Yi Shiwen and more than a dozen lightning people quasi-emperors who directly followed out. Yi Shiwen fought against more than a dozen people, and he was evenly matched with them. He directly rushed into the Lightning People army, and the aftermath of his attack annihilated countless Lightning People. They did not care at all. And just when everyone was still amazed, suddenly, an amazing law wave swept over from an unknown distance, directly into the retribution cloud, and the target was Yi Shiwen. Boom! The void was trembling, and wherever this law wave passed, the void was boiling like boiling water, instantly boiling. This law wave did not care about anything at all, and it blasted down from all directions. It was unknown how many Lightning People and God Kings along the way were annihilated, and then it directly hit Yi Shiwen's head. At this critical moment, Yi Shiwen's body instantly glowed with an infinite seven-colored radiance. It transformed into a huge figure in the sky and directly rushed towards this law wave. Buzz! Countless rays of light swept out as the two sides collided. A large piece of the tribulation cloud was torn out, and countless galaxies in the distance were collapsing. This strike crossed half the universe. He wanted to take advantage of Yi Shiwen's unpreparedness to kill him, but the result was that he was instantly blocked. Even those Lightning People quasi-emperors who were besieging Yi Shiwen were sent flying. What's that? Many gods could not help but inhale a breath of cold air. An attack that crossed half the universe could actually be so terrifying. This was completely out of their expectations. However, there was one thing that they understood, and that was that someone else had interfered with the tribulation, and this person was even more terrifying than those quasi-emperors from before. To be able to unleash such an attack from more than half a universe away, this person should be considered a top expert in the current world. They couldn't imagine what kind of powerhouse could unleash such an attack. How many people had this human named Yi Shiwen offended? Moreover, all of them were invincible super powerhouses. This attack almost made them think that it was an emperor who had attacked. Otherwise, it was impossible to create such an amazing scene. Yi Shiwen stood in the tribulation cloud with a cold and expressionless face. He just shouted loudly, "If you want to attack, come at me face to face. It's impossible to hurt me from such a distance." Yi Shiwen's body was flowing with layers of flowing lights, and the power of time wrapped him tightly. The attack just now was really terrifying. If it wasn't for the protection of the time robe, he would have been seriously injured by this attack. Yi Shiwen, who had been prepared for a long time, was very clear that this was a Dao tool. A Dao tool had participated in this battle. Otherwise, it was impossible to unleash such an amazing attack. However, he did not panic, because this was also the situation that he had expected. Otherwise, he wouldn't have needed to find so many helpers. Yi Shiwen, today is the day of your death. At this time, a figure approached from far away, directly crossing half the universe and rushing in front of Yi Shiwen. A long spear in his hand erupted with dazzling light. Around his long spear, the space was constantly collapsing and being repaired. That long spear was already so sharp that even if it didn't recover, it could still shatter heaven and earth. Sky Splitter Spear. Yi Shiwen immediately recognized this long spear. The people of the Tian clan had attacked. He didn't expect that it would be a super powerful Dao tool. Although he had once blocked the Sky Splitter Spear and Myriad Worlds diagram by himself, it was only to stall them. He didn't have much chance of winning in a 1 versus 2 fight. Sky Splitter Spear, I didn't expect to see you again. I haven't fought for a long time. I'm very happy to see an old friend. Let me see how much you have grown over the years. However, he heard a slightly playful voice. Yi Shiwen's blood light soared into the sky, sweeping towards the Sky Splitter Spear with a shocking momentum. Wham! The blood light and the Sky Splitter Spear collided fiercely. The heaven and earth shook, and the originally incomparably tough tribulation cloud was swept out a huge crack. Although it was recovering at an even more amazing speed, the power of this collision could be imagined, and how terrifying it was. Rumble! The tool spirit of the Sky Splitter Spear was knocked out in one breath, directly tearing a huge crack in the universe. It was unknown how many stars were annihilated along the way, almost like a galaxy was destroyed. Roar, damn it, who? The Sky Splitter Spear was knocked out, almost immediately reacted. With a long spear in hand, he was invincible in the world. He couldn't tolerate being tricked by someone. The person who wants your life. With a loud roar, the blood-red light pounced over once again. It instantly unleashed a storm-like attack, causing the sky-splitting spear to be unable to raise its head. He was also extremely depressed. As a dignified Tao tool spirit, ordinary quasi-emperors were not his opponent. He had always beaten others to the point where they couldn't raise their heads. Since when could others beat him to the point where they couldn't raise their heads? After a series of attacks, he finally managed to stabilize himself. Only then did he see clearly that it was a huge demonic shadow that was attacking him. That familiar feeling made him instantly return to the distant past. That was the second war against the heavens. It's you. He suddenly remembered who the person in front of him was. The other party was also a supreme existence that could compete with him, and was definitely not ordinary. Damn it. Why is he here too? The Sky Splitter Spear couldn't help but feel extremely depressed. The Sky Race also knew that Yi Shiwen had a Tao tool, and even knew about the existence of the Time Robe and the Avicii Sword, but they never expected that there would be such a person. Wasn't it said that he had fallen along with his master a long time ago? The Sky Splitter Spear had not been sealed or exiled. Thus, he had spent all these years in the myriad heavens and realms, so he was not unfamiliar with this information. He even knew many ancient secrets. Humph, do you think you can stop us by yourself? At this time, another figure cut through the vast sky and rushed over. It was none other than the Myriad Worlds map. Last time, the Myriad Worlds map and the Sky Splitter Spear suffered losses in the hands of Yi Shiwen. This time, there was a chance to kill Yi Shiwen, so he naturally wouldn't miss it. The third Tao tool. There was actually a third Tao tool. When the gods saw this, they almost fainted from fright. Even if a peak divine king was crossing the quasi-emperor tribulation, it was impossible to have a confrontation of Tao tools, let alone 3 Tao tools. For them, this was simply an incredible life miracle. Many of them had already made up their minds to go back and investigate who this person was and how he could be so powerful. The 2 Tao tools were fully activated. Besieging Yi simply clenched his teeth and directly merged with the Tianyuan mirror. Instantly, his strength erupted, and in an instant, he recovered to the peak. Fighting against the 2 Tao tools, he actually didn't fall into a disadvantageous position for a while. Yi Shiwen didn't care about the battle outside the heavenly retribution, because at this time, he was entangled by the lightning people quasi-emperors, and had no way to support Yimo. Without the Time Robe, it was impossible for him to withstand so many Divine King-level heavenly retribution army. Rumble. The whole battlefield seemed to be divided into 2 parts. One part was Yi Shiwen crossing the heavenly retribution, and the other part was the battle between the 3 Tao tools. I will hold him back. You go and kill that damn human. At this time, the Sky Splitter Spear roared and said. Obviously, it was discussing with the Myriad Worlds diagram. Even if they had the advantage of 2 against 1, it was impossible to defeat Yimo in a short time. Previously, the Avicii Sword had taken a long time to swallow the half-damaged body of the Enlightening Emperor Sword. One could imagine how difficult it was to deal with these Tao tools. It was also because they were all Tao tools that they were more aware of how difficult it was to deal with each other. And the Myriad Worlds diagram did not hesitate at all and directly rushed towards Yi Shiwen, who was under the heavenly retribution. This heavenly retribution was also a death trap for ordinary quasi-emperors, but these Tao tools were completely different and could not be judged by ordinary logic. Moreover, it wanted to rush in, upgrade the heavenly retribution, and directly kill Yi Shiwen. It believed that it could resist more than Yi Shiwen, and as long as Yi Shiwen died, then the heavenly retribution would also be over. This battle would be completely over. Dang! A melodious bell sound spread across half of the universe, and the sound wave formed by the bell sound was incomparably sharp, sweeping all the way across the starry sky and directly bombarding the tool spirit of the Myriad Worlds diagram. Rumble! There was a loud sound of collision, and the power of the law of Tao runes wreaked havoc everywhere, as if 2 worlds had collided. Chapter 2832. Dao Tool. It was another shockwave from a Dao tool. It was another shockwave from a Dao tool. It crossed the universe and tore apart a large part of the sky. The shockwave shattered countless stars. Who is it? The myriad worlds diagram roared, and the galaxy shook. A figure crossed the universe. Myriad worlds diagram. I haven't seen you for many years, but you still haven't made much progress. Suddenly, a majestic voice came from afar. A middle-aged man in an emperor's robe came all the way, stepping on golden light all the way, like a golden bridge across half of the universe. Demon Emperor, no, it's the Demon Emperor Bell. Yi Shiwen saw the familiar voice in front of him and immediately reacted. However, he immediately reacted. This was not the Demon Emperor, but the Demon Emperor Bell. That was because the last bit of the Demon Emperor's divine sense had been completely destroyed in front of him. Now that it had appeared again, it was obviously not the Demon Emperor, but the spirit of the Demon Emperor Bell. Although it looked the same and incomparably majestic, he still felt that there was some gap between it and the Demon Emperor. Good. Today there are many people who want to protect this boy. The eyes of the myriad worlds diagram burst out bursts of light. Looking a little crazy, I want to see how the Demon Emperor Bell can stop me. Do you think it's still the time when your master was alive? Even if my master is not alive, it is still enough to kill you. The Demon Emperor Bell was not to be outdone, looking calm, as if it was talking about a matter that was not important at all. Demon Emperor Bell, you really talk big. On the myriad worlds diagram, the figure trembled with anger. Originally, with his cultivation level, no matter what kind of stimulation it would be impossible for him to be moved in the slightest. However, this Demon Emperor's Bell was different. Back then, he had fought with the Demon Emperor's Bell and suffered a great loss. He remembered it until now and considered it to be an absolute humiliation. Now, he had completely erupted after being provoked by the Demon Emperor's Bell. At this moment, several powerful divine senses swept across the sky. The commotion here had finally attracted the attention of those hidden quasi-emperors. There was no way for it not to attract their attention, because the commotion here was simply too great. A battle between Dao artifacts was rarely seen in the world. 2 Dao artifacts were already earth-shattering enough, let alone 4 of them attacking at the same time. This kind of situation was rarely seen in the world. Boom! The picture of 10,000 worlds emitted boundless divine radiance. Countless worlds were condensed in the air and fell towards the Demon Emperor's Bell like raindrops. Many quasi-emperors held their breaths as they watched. They did not dare to breathe. These condensed worlds were more terrifying than the previous one. Any one of them could crush a god king to death and severely injure a quasi-emperor. In front of him, the Demon Emperor Bell did not panic at all. It was as if it was already prepared for such a move. With a cold smile, he flipped his palm, and an ancient bell appeared in his hand. Even though there was no wind, it started to sway by itself. Clang, clang, clang. The melodious sound of the ancient bell spread out, and the falling worlds actually exploded in the air after being swept by these sound waves, instantly shattering into pieces. Boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions sounded. The attack of the picture of 10,000 worlds had no effect on the Demon Emperor Bell at all. It was directly broken. The amazing strength of the Demon Emperor Bell was finally revealed. The peerless magic weapon that followed the Demon Emperor to conquer the world had finally recovered. Inside its body, there was the primordial spirit left behind by the Demon Emperor. It was simply the resurrection of the Demon Emperor. To a certain extent, the fight between the two was equivalent to 2 sovereign emperors who had already passed away fighting again after countless years. Such a scene made many people's blood boil, especially those who had never heard of the majesty of the 2 emperors. At this moment, they also held their breath and focused their attention. Picture of 10,000 worlds. If this is just a small trick, I advise you not to come out. Otherwise, if I beat you up, do you still have the face to stand in this world? The Demon Emperor Bell said indifferently, as if it was a matter of course. This made the picture of 10,000 worlds even angrier. Demon Emperor Bell, don't be too arrogant. Watch me. The picture of 10,000 worlds roared. The picture under his feet began to gradually blur. It was about to merge with heaven and earth. The terrifying momentum also increased all the way and continued to become stronger and stronger. Shaking Zhou frowned slightly. Demon Emperor Bell, do you think that after so many years, I haven't made any progress? The picture of 10,000 worlds roared loudly, and his whole body directly hid in the heaven and earth. In an instant, there were countless shouts in the heaven and earth. In an instant, there were countless laws manifesting, forming a terrifying attack towards the Demon Emperor Bell. The Demon Emperor Bell only sneered coldly. Waves of sound waves appeared around his body, blocking all the laws of the heaven and earth that came crashing down. As an old rival of the picture of 10,000 worlds, how could he not know how many tricks the picture of 10,000 worlds had? He had integrated himself into the heaven and earth, and his mind had integrated with the 10,000 worlds. He borrowed their power to launch a terrifying attack that caused the entire way of heaven to tremble. This was also the principle of refining the picture of 10,000 worlds. In order to refine the picture of 10,000 worlds, his master had visited all the 10,000 worlds in the world and absorbed a part of their world origin. This was how he was able to condense the picture of 10,000 worlds. Because of this, the picture of 10,000 worlds could actually integrate with the 10,000 worlds and borrow their power. Compared to his own power, this borrowed power was stronger. Moreover, its composition itself was composed of many parts of the world will of the 10,000 worlds. There was not the slightest bit of inconsistency, and all of them could be used. This was a great method that ordinary quasi-emperors would not even dare to think about. It was simply not something that people below the emperor level could achieve. Those who could cultivate to the emperor level must have reached the peak of a certain path. Each of them was unimaginably strong. Many people could only see the strength of those emperor level in the ancient books. At this time, the battle between the two sides satisfied the mentality of many people who wanted to find out the truth. Was this how the ancient emperor level fought? These laws all crushed down, but the Demon Emperor Bell did not change in the slightest. It just constantly swept out the sound waves, making it impossible for the picture of 10,000 worlds to get close to it. There was a faint layer of light around his body. Even if the picture of 10,000 worlds could occasionally attack it, it would definitely not be able to penetrate the barrier around him. This is from the law of sound. It has advanced to the law of space. When the picture of 10,000 worlds saw this scene, he could not help but widen his eyes and look completely incredulous. One must know that he still remembered that the Demon Emperor Bell had clearly not comprehended this step in the past. Back then, the Demon Emperor relied on the law of sound to be invincible. At that time, he began the crucial step of condensing the law of sound into the law of space. After so many years, he finally achieved it. The picture of 10,000 worlds expression changed. How could he not know how terrifying the current Demon Emperor Bell was? The four corners of the universe were formed by the two basic laws of time and space. In the world, all the laws were beyond this. As long as one could grasp them and cultivate along the way, one could quickly surpass others. However, there were not many people who could successfully cultivate the law of space. In the ancient times, it was also the privilege of a small number of people, so he did not guard against it. But now, as soon as he made his move, he was tricked by the Demon Emperor Bell. The law of space, the Demon Emperor's Bell. I never thought that after so many years, under the circumstances where your master had already fallen, you would still be able to comprehend it to such an extent. No wonder there was news back then that you were completely different from us, two completely different creatures. The picture of 10,000 worlds widened his eyes in disbelief. It was as if he could only reluctantly accept it now. Naturally, he was very clear that once the law of space broke out, unless his skills were far superior to the Demon Emperor Bell, it was very normal for him to be defeated by the law of space. That's why I said that you really did not make any progress over the years. All these years, you have been doing these things. The Demon Emperor Bell laughed coldly, and for the first time, its face showed some expression. This made many people who were preparing to watch the fight feel a sense of disbelief. It should be known that compared to a normal Dao artifact, a Dao artifact that had left its master should not be able to cultivate normally. This was because although they were very strong and had a high level of comprehension, everyone was very clear that they had a high starting point, which meant that every step forward would have to pay a huge price. The Demon Emperor Bell was able to improve further, which was also beyond the expectations of many people. Go to hell? The picture of 10,000 worlds roared, and countless worlds fell like raindrops. The Demon Emperor Bell, on the other hand, looked very calm. It constantly created the law of space to protect itself. Immediately, it became invincible and indestructible. Then, it launched an attack. In an instant, the situation was reversed. The picture of 10,000 worlds, which was originally favored by the Demon Emperor Bell, was unexpectedly blocked by the Demon Emperor Bell. On the contrary, the Demon Emperor Bell seized the initiative and continuously attacked, causing the picture of 10,000 worlds to be utterly defeated. Picture of 10,000 worlds, with your current strength, do you still think that you have the ability to break free from my attack? The Demon Emperor Bell said calmly. I advise you to obediently admit defeat. Otherwise, the consequences are not something you can bear. Ha 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 ha. The picture of 10,000 worlds laughed and said, Demon Emperor Bell, I admit that you are indeed a little stronger than me, but so what? Do you think that you can defeat me? I want to see how many unknown consequences there are. The picture of 10,000 worlds roared and directly rushed in the direction of the Demon Emperor Bell. Chapter 28:33. The Myriad Worlds Diagram and the Demon Emperor's Bell, no matter how strong they were existences at the level of Dao tools. When fully unleashed, it was equivalent to a powerful attack from an Emperor. One could imagine how terrifying a fight between existences at this level would be. Of course, it was impossible for them to unleash their full strength so easily and casually. After all, the sovereign emperors were no longer here. If they forcefully ignited their strength and unleashed their strength, it was very likely that they would perish. It was simply impossible for them to burn their strength to such an extent just to get rid of Yi Shiwen. It was a bit of a loss for them. But even so, a fight of this level was enough to stun everyone. Another battlefield was opened up. Under the situation where the Demon Emperor's Bell attacked with all its strength, the Myriad Worlds Diagram had no way to hurt Yi Shiwen. It could only continue to roar, unable to move forward. At this time, Yi Shiwen continued to attack, sweeping in all directions under the heaven's retribution. Those quasi-emperor level lightning people all rushed over. Yi Shiwen had an ice-cold expression on his face. However, he had already made a plan in his mind. The existences of the Dao tool level were continuously attacking him. He didn't know how many more terrifying existences would attack him if this situation continued. He did not dare to delay any longer. He wanted to directly kill these lightning people and pass this terrifying heaven's retribution. Although all of this was still within his expectations, as more and more Dao artifacts joined in, the entire situation was constantly escalating. In fact, it even made him a little apprehensive. Even he did not know how many people he had offended. Moreover, he did not need to offend anyone. As long as he was not pleasing to the eye, there was a possibility that he would attack. Bang! Yi Shiwen punched the chest of the lightning person knight. The lightning person kept retreating and wanted to regroup in the distance. But how could Yi Shiwen give him such a chance? He directly rushed out and blasted out the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Boom! The 6 paths of reincarnation roulette constantly rotated, condensing into a shocking fist energy and blasted out. Whoosh! 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 The moment Yi Shiwen attacked, the other lightning people's quasi-emperor realm experts also attacked one after another. They pounced towards Yi Shiwen to kill him. They didn't give Yi Shiwen any opportunity to attack further. They weren't living creatures, but their battle intuition was bestowed by the heavens. So, they were much stronger than ordinary people. So, they naturally knew what to do. Boom! A series of explosions rose from Yi Shiwen's body. However, Yi Shiwen resisted this attack head-on. The time robe transformed into a huge giant and swallowed all the attacks. Yi Shiwen could see that the Emperor's source was being consumed at an astonishing speed. There was no need to talk about the power of the chrono robe. It was invincible. However, the consumption rate was simply too high. But at this moment, he couldn't care less. He wanted to live. He wanted to fight against the heavens. He wanted to be invincible. Bang! The Lightning Knight had just retreated to the side and was ready to regroup. However, Yi Shiwen's fist struck him on the spot, and his entire body instantly disintegrated. Then, Yi Shiwen grabbed his body and put it into his time robe. It barely managed to replenish a part of his energy consumption. Yi Shiwen didn't stop for even a moment. He rushed into the midst of the Lightning People's army and started a crazy massacre. Those quasi-emperors weren't easy to kill in a short time, but those divine kings were much easier. He constantly killed them and then replenished the consumption of the time robe. At the same time, the huge fire phoenix behind him was also absorbing the tribulation fire that filled the sky, and at the same time, it spat out Nanmingli fire, burning those divine kings to death. The whole scene looked extremely chaotic. There were flames, lightning tribulations, and the Lightning People's army everywhere. The laws were in turmoil, and the laws were shattered. Looking at it from afar, it was a ghastly sight. This Yi Shiwen is a bit too fierce. Many quasi-emperors swallowed a mouthful of saliva when they saw this scene. They had just started to watch, so naturally, they didn't see the awe-inspiring scene when Yi Shiwen killed a group of quasi-emperors. However, it didn't prevent them from feeling shocked at this moment. Even if they were quasi-emperors, they would not be able to achieve what Yi Shiwen had done, let alone a mere divine king. Why do I feel that he is crossing the Emperor Tribulation when he is crossing the Quasi-Emperor Tribulation? A Quasi-Emperor couldn't help but say. Compared to Yi Shiwen's terrifying Heaven Tribulation, when they were crossing the Quasi-Emperor Tribulation, they didn't seem to be 1/10 or even 1/100th as terrifying. In their opinion, even if they were to be promoted to the Emperor realm, it would probably be like this. But this Yi Shiwen was actually so terrifying when he was crossing the Quasi-Emperor Tribulation. If he continues like this, if he really succeeds in crossing the Tribulation, I'm afraid it will be terrifying to death. Many people couldn't help but feel a chill down their spine. How terrifying was this? If he was already so powerful as a divine king, then what would happen if he became a Quasi-Emperor? An even more intense battle was still going on. The entire airspace was groaning, as if it couldn't bear the scene of two Dao weapons clashing. But everyone soon discovered that the entire space suddenly stabilized, and the original shaking situation disappeared in an instant. No one noticed that someone had made a move. Moreover, it was impossible to make a move just to stabilize the space in this situation, unless one had nothing better to do. Then there was only one possibility. The heavenly way was automatically reinforcing the space. Many people were constantly gasping. The battle here could actually be compared to the heavenly way automatically reinforcing the space. This was simply unheard of and unseen. As everyone knew, the heavenly way was not in existence with subjective consciousness. It was a collection of the will of all things in the world. The meaning of its existence was to maintain the balance and order of the operation of all things in the world. Martial artists who continued to cultivate would have to face powerful heaven tribulation. This was also the will of all things, because they were defying the heaven and going against the will of all things. That was because it was impossible for the energy in the world to be continuously produced. There was a fixed amount. The more cultivators there were, the less the ordinary life forms would be able to get. Hence, they would inadvertently incur the wrath of the masses. And the heavenly Tao was the manifestation of the will of these seemingly insignificant ants. As the saying goes, as long as the saints don't die, the robbers don't stop. Some people even suspected that the so-called Great Tribulation and Cataclysm were automatically used by the heavenly way to maintain the balance between the world and eliminate a part of the martial artists. This statement was appalling, but many people secretly believed it. However, the heavenly way did not have subjective consciousness after all, and it was impossible to manifest under ordinary circumstances. Often, it would manifest its will only when people had committed a heinous crime or when they were about to cross the heavenly way. This behavior of actively reinforcing the space was obviously because the battle here had obviously exceeded the normal bearing range of the space and might even cause permanent collapse. At least, they had never seen such an amazing scene when they were fighting. Yishuan also noticed that the space had become more solid. Originally, he could smash the void with a casual punch, but now it seemed as if he had punched a wall. An ordinary punch could not penetrate the space at all. It was obvious that the space had been reinforced by many times. This is also good. I can attack unscrupulously now. Yishuan laughed out loud, and the time robe on his body became even more brilliant, wrapping him from top to bottom. All the offensive attacks were blocked, and a part of them was absorbed and transformed. His attacks were even more unscrupulous, especially when facing those lightning people quasi-emperors, and were even more unyielding. He attacked 2 or 3 people at once, and although the consumption of Emperor Source was also very terrifying, under such circumstances, Yishuan had no other choice. However, just when everyone thought that the battle was going to be in a stalemate in the void, there was another huge mass of cold air across the vast sky and rushed into the tribulation clouds, aiming at Yishuan. Another Dao tool was attacking. Boom! This mass of cold air directly froze the surrounding thousands of miles, turning into a kingdom of ice crystals, and everything was frozen. Even Yishuan and the lightning people quasi-emperors could not escape this attack. At this time, a cold ice broke through the vast sky, and a huge talisman appeared above the clouds. It was an ancient word, ice. This was a Dao character that was condensed innately and contained the great Dao of ice attribute laws. It had unimaginable power, and if it was obtained by someone, it would be enough to ascend in a short time. The heavens' retribution seemed to be angered, and several people wanted to interfere with the crossing of the tribulation, which made it angry. The heavens' retribution transformed into a huge heavenly eye, indifferent and ruthless, staring at the word ice. It deterred the ice talisman from coming in. Slowly, around the ice talisman, a young man in an azure blue robe appeared. South Pole Loose Cultivator? A quasi-emperor immediately recognized the identity of this young man. How could it be him? Isn't he always cultivating in the extremely cold land of the south all year round, and doesn't usually take action? Who can ask him to take action? Hiss. Although South Pole Loose Cultivator is an independent person, his luck is extremely good, and he obtained the innate ancient ice talisman. And in a short time, he approached the peak of quasi-emperor, and ordinary people are no match for him. More quasi-emperors were confused. Originally, they thought that only those who were not on good terms with Yishuan would take action. But now even someone like South Pole Loose Cultivator, who seemed to have no relationship with Yishuan, had taken action to obstruct Yishuan. What was going on? Boom! 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 The frozen land of heavenly tribulation exploded into pieces. Yishuan took the lead and rushed out of it. He had the protection of the time robe, so he wasn't injured in the slightest. He just looked at the South Pole Loose Cultivator with an indifferent expression. Chapter 28:34. Antarctic Loose Cultivator. I don't have any enmity with you, but I don't know why you have come here. Yishuan asked with an indifferent look on his face. Yishuan, someone has asked me to help you, but I know that you have a Thunder character talisman. As long as you hand over the Thunder character talisman, I will immediately leave. How about it? Antarctic Loose Practitioner said with a faint smile. Ha. You really have a good plan. Yishuan flipped his palm, and the Thunder character appeared on his hand, constantly exuding powerful lightning rays. You want it? Wishful thinking. Who do you think you are to take advantage of the situation? South Pole Loose Cultivator's face suddenly turned cold. He did not expect that Yishuan would not have the slightest intention of retreating in this situation. Good. South Pole Loose Cultivator said coldly. Since you are not willing to hand it over, then I will come and take it myself. Take it? Good. I want to see how you will come in and take it. If you have the guts, then come in. If you don't have the guts, then wait for me to cross the heavenly tribulation and come out to kill you." Yi Shiwen sneered and simply ignored South Pole Loose Cultivator. He directly rushed towards the lightning quasi-emperors who rushed out of the ice. Bang! 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 The heavenly tribulation, which had stopped because of South Pole Loose Cultivator's intervention, began to move again. A fierce battle was on the verge of breaking out. No one had expected that even under the circumstances of being besieged, Yi Shiwen did not show the slightest weakness and became even more unyielding. Everyone looked at South Pole Loose Cultivator. Yi Shiwen had issued a battle declaration. How would he respond? Would he really rush in? With his strength, if he really rushed into the heavenly tribulation, then it would be inevitable that the heavenly tribulation would increase by another level. In that case, the probability of Yi Shiwen crossing the heavenly tribulation would be greatly reduced, and he might also die here. After all, the intensity of Yi Shiwen's heavenly tribulation was obvious to everyone. Even those quasi-emperors who saw it were already stunned. Perhaps the legendary emperor's tribulation was just like this. If it increased by another level, even those quasi-emperors would not be able to withstand it and would be struck to death on the spot, or directly killed by these lightning quasi-emperors. Many people had already guessed that the layer of seven-colored flowing light on Yi Shiwen's body was a Dao tool. It was precisely because he had a Dao tool to protect him that Yi Shiwen was so fearless. Even when facing the attacks of so many quasi-emperors, he did not care at all. However, South Pole Unfettered didn't have this kind of ability. If he were to enter and face this level of heavenly tribulation, he would probably be blasted to death on the spot. He simply couldn't withstand it. This was also the reason why no more quasi-emperors joined the crusade against Yi Shiwen. They were all frightened by the intensity of the heavenly tribulation. Not to mention Yi Shiwen's combat strength. The heavenly tribulation alone was enough to kill them. South Pole's Unfettered Cultivator's entire body emitted a frightening chill. A huge ice word appeared around him. Space and time were all distorted and frozen. The chill was shocking to the heavens. "Since you want to die, then I will fulfill your wish," Antarctic Loose Practitioner shouted in anger. That ice word swept out like an ice dragon and rushed towards Yi Shiwen. He didn't enter the heavenly tribulation. However, he could directly enter the heavenly tribulation. He wanted to kill Yi Shiwen. Suddenly, a burst of death energy spread out at this time. Then, a huge withered claw rushed towards South Pole Unfettered. It was as fast as lightning. It was incomparably swift. "Who is it?" South Pole Unfettered retreated again and again. He barely managed to avoid this attack. The space fluctuated, and a mass of death energy spread out. It seemed as if it wanted to transform the entire heavens into her kingdom of death. A white-robed woman strode out of it. She had a beautiful face, but her expression was incomparably indifferent. She was staring at South Pole Unfettered. Who was this person? Many quasi-emperors didn't react. They didn't know who this white-robed woman was. South Pole Unfettered was infinitely close to the peak of quasi-emperor realm. He was already in existence of the great perfection of the late stage of quasi-emperor realm. Even a peak expert of the quasi-emperor realm might not be able to defeat him. But in the end, he was forced to retreat by this woman. They tried to recall, but they didn't have the slightest impression of this person. It must be known that many people had lived for God knows how many years. Some of them had even survived the war against the heavens. It was unknown how many experts they had seen. At this level, even if they didn't have any friendship, they would still have an impression. How could they not have the slightest impression of this person? A huge roulette was constantly rotating in the woman's hand. Why does this look a bit like the 10,000 Law roulette? A celestial race quasi-emperor softly said. It looked somewhat similar, but it wasn't exactly the same. Therefore, they didn't dare to be certain. In the past, 10,000 Law King could be said to be an illustrious existence among them. In the celestial race, he was an existence below the Emperor realm. Naturally, many people knew about his 10,000 Law roulette. But after thinking about it, it didn't seem to be like this. Yi Shiwen saw the woman in white from the corner of his eyes, and a pleasantly surprised expression appeared on his face. Who else could it be other than Yi Qianqian? At this time, Yi Qianqian's body was exuding an extremely powerful aura, especially the constantly rotating roulette in her hand. Yi Shiwen naturally recognized that it was the 10,000-law roulette. However, it seemed to have undergone some kind of mutation and had changed from his impression of the 10,000-law roulette. In any case, he wasn't surprised that Yi Qianqian had come to help him, but that Yi Qianqian had safely escaped from that death space. That death space was really too mysterious. There were endless yellow springs flowing there, and there were countless dead souls after their deaths. If it wasn't for the fact that they were in a tense situation at that time, he would have definitely chosen to follow Yi Qianqian inside. At this time, compared to many years ago, Yi Qianqian had already undergone a complete transformation. Hand over the ice word, and I will spare your life. Yi Qianqian enunciated each word clearly, with a playful expression on her face. South Pole Unfettered's complexion became even more ashen. Yi Qianqian was clearly mocking him for what had just happened. All right, I see that you're also on the same side as him. You're really courting death. South Pole Unfettered raised his hand, and in an instant, ice crystals filled the sky and transformed into countless ice spears. The ice spears formed a monstrous torrent that blasted towards Yi Qianqian. The spears were like a huge torrent that blasted towards Yi Qianqian. Yi Qianqian stood there motionlessly, but the spears passed through her body as if they were just illusions. This is actually an illusion. South Pole Unfettered's expression changed slightly. It had to be known that with his cultivation, any kind of illusion was like a fleeting cloud in front of him. He would be able to see through it with just a glance. In the end, he suffered a loss because he couldn't see through Yi Qianqian. In his opinion, this was impossible. Oomph! Yi Qianqian sneered, and the 10,000-law roulette in her hand flew out, sprinkling boundless death energy. In an instant, it formed a death kingdom and blasted towards South Pole Unfettered. Damn it! South Pole Unfettered roared, and an ice spear appeared in his hand. He swept it horizontally and blasted it towards the death kingdom. Boom! His spear blasted a huge hole in the sky, but it directly penetrated through the Death God Nation, just like when he was facing Yi Shiwen just now. Such a strange scene made South Pole Unfettered feel goosebumps all over his body. Such a scene was really too strange. Yi Qianqian just glanced at him indifferently, and the Death Kingdom continued to descend at lightning speed. Bang! The Death Kingdom fell, and the entire universe was blasted into pieces. In that moment of imminent peril, Antarctic Loose Cultivator directly fled from his previous position and was almost bombarded to death by the Death God's kingdom. His expression was incomparably ugly and extremely ashen. He stared at Yi Qianqian, and countless expressions were constantly changing in his eyes. He thought of countless things in an instant, and it seemed as if he was thinking about how Yi Qianqian could freely change between illusion and reality. My existence lies between life and death. Yi Qianqian faintly smiled and said, Hand over the ice word, and I will spare your life. Otherwise, you won't be able to live when he comes out. Damn it, slut. Who do you think you are? South Pole Unfettered had never encountered such a situation. One must know that even an emperor-level inheritance wouldn't dare to neglect him like this. It seems that you've forgotten how to kneel after all these years of glory, Yi Qianqian faintly said. Suddenly, her figure slightly moved, and her whole body directly teleported out. She rushed in front of South Pole Unfettered, and the endless power of death around her body transformed into a divine radiance that filled the sky. Then a long whiplash down. Boom! 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 South Pole Unfettered was constantly pushed back in the face of this attack, and was in a very difficult situation. The divine radiance of death was constantly flashing on Yi Qianqian's body. He clearly knew that Yi Qianqian was using some kind of secret technique. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for her to be so terrifying and powerful. However, he had never seen such a technique before. This was what shocked him the most. He had cultivated for so many years, and he had seen all kinds of techniques. It was impossible to hide from him, but he had never seen such a technique before. It was really too strange. If he ignored it, such an attack would become real, but if he tried to face it, it would become an illusion. He couldn't fight back, and he could not fight back either. He was so depressed that he could die. There were several times when he would have been blasted to death if it weren't for the ice crystal armor he was wearing. "Who are you?" he roared. "You're not qualified to know my name." Yi Qianqian's expression was cold, as if she was talking to an ant. Whoosh! Suddenly, the space around her slightly changed, and a black figure suddenly appeared. Chapter 28:35. You don't have the right to know my name. Yi Qianqian's expression was cold, as though she was talking to an ant. Swoosh! Suddenly, the space around her fluctuated slightly, and a black figure appeared instantly. Embrace death. A sinister laugh was heard from the universe. Then, everyone saw a gigantic sickle descend from the sky and slash at Yi Qianqian. Whoosh! Just as the huge sickle was about to behead Yi Qianqian, it directly swept past her body. It was as if it had hit an illusion. It was completely useless. Yi Qianqian's reaction was even faster, and she slapped the black figure. However, something even more shocking happened. Yi Qianqian's figure passed through the black figure, just like how the person's sickle had passed through Yi Qianqian's figure. It was the exact same method. What the hell is going on? No one dared to believe it. This kind of method was too strange, and it did not seem like he had directly hidden in an alternate dimension. That was because ordinary alternate dimensions were too close to him. For existences of their level, it was not very meaningful at all. A casual attack from them could shatter the space, so it was meaningless for them to hide in a nearby space. How did Yi Qianqian and the black-robed person do it? Many people felt a little interested. Yi Qianqian frowned, as though she had thought of something. "So it's you stinking bugs. How dare you appear in front of me?" The black figure disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was already thousands of miles away. He was in a state of mutual hostility with Nan Zunren and Yi Qianqian. Nan Zunren was a little confused, as he didn't know who the black-robed person was and why he had come out to help him. There's no mistaking the power of death. It's such a wonderful smell. It seems like you've been to the death paradise. The black-robed person's eyes were fixed on Yi Qianqian. The death paradise. The death paradise. An old quasi-emperor almost jumped up when he heard these words. How is this possible? It's the legendary death paradise. Death paradise? What's that? There were also some slightly inexperienced quasi-emperor god-kings who didn't know what the so-called Death Heaven Kingdom was, so they couldn't help but ask curiously. Something that could make these old fellows, who were usually very calm, jump up was definitely not a simple place. That's right. Yi Qianqian did not deny it. You should be one of the Hades. That's right, ha ha ha. The man in black laughed, and then looked at Yi Qianqian coldly. I know your name. You're Yi Qianqian, right? You should be the guy who obtained the orthodoxy of the Death Lord. Since you've already obtained the orthodoxy of the Death Lord, you should have been the Hades queen of our nether kingdom. Why didn't you return? Yi Qianqian frowned slightly and said with some disgust, Come back? Don't tell me I'm like you guys, neither dead nor alive. Why do you have to talk to me about such a loathsome existence? The expression of the man in black immediately became unsightly. It seems that you and the Death Lord are also despicable. She betrayed the Nether Kingdom back then, and now you want to betray the Nether Kingdom. Very well, very well. All of you have to die. I don't have any relationship with her. But do you want to force me to do something that even she doesn't want to do? Yi Qianqian said, You people have already gone astray. Today, I'm here to clean up your sect. Everyone was a little confused. What was going on? Were they brothers and sisters of the same sect? Otherwise, how could they talk about cleaning up the sect? There were even more people who were very interested in this Nether Kingdom. The Nether Kingdom, according to legend, is the country of the dead. It is an absolutely mysterious world, and no one knows where the legendary Nether Kingdom is. It is only rumored that in the Nether Kingdom, there is a Nether Emperor who controls death. Since a long time ago, he was born according to the will of heaven and earth. There are even many records of the Nether Kingdom in many myths and legends. An old quasi-emperor said solemnly, "When I was very young, the legends of the Nether Kingdom were everywhere in the universe. The emperors ruled the world of the living, and the Nether Emperor was the ruler of the Nether Kingdom. He controlled the world of the dead, and all the dead were under his control, no matter what race they were. There were no exceptions. Could it be the Nether Kingdom? There were also some people who remembered that in the ancient legends, the legend of the underworld, there was such a world of the dead, but no one had ever seen it because everyone who had seen it was already dead. Only the dead could go to such a world. It was rumored that there was even a demon king who was not satisfied with ruling the world of the living. He entered the Nether Kingdom and fought with the ruler of the Nether Kingdom for thousands of years, and finally comprehended the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. That was the Azura Demon King. It was an incomparably terrifying legend and world. Even the invincible emperors in the universe could not do anything to that world. It was just that for countless years, almost no one appeared in the Nether Kingdom, and these rumors eventually became myths and legends, and no one knew about them. Yes, it is the Nether Kingdom. Whether it is the Nether Kingdom or the Nether Kingdom, they are all referring to them. It's just that different places have different interpretations. The old quasi-emperor nodded solemnly. He had lived for a very long time and had seen many mysterious existences that ordinary people did not even dare to think about. Everyone looked thoughtful. Even though they were already existences at the level of gods, they still could not truly control life and death. At most, they could only resist the invasion of death on their bodies. Hearing this old quasi-emperor's words, many people suddenly gasped. Many people might not have heard of the Nether Kingdom, but they had all heard of the Nether Kingdom. It was an extremely mysterious organization that did not seem to exist, but seemed to exist at the same time. Even the inheritors of the emperors kept their mouths shut when the Nether Kingdom was mentioned, as if it was a taboo. Because everyone had never seen it, they just regarded it as a myth and legend. They were not at that level, so they could only interpret many things as myths and legends. However, they did not know that there would be no waves without wind. Since the legends about the Nether Kingdom were everywhere in the universe, it naturally could not be groundless. Everyone was even more curious about what kind of grievances there were between the two parties. One wanted to kill the other party, and the other wanted to clean up the sect. They fought to the death as soon as they appeared, so it was absolutely impossible for them to have an ordinary relationship. Wrong path. Only our path is the most correct. Many people think that death is the end, but they are gravely mistaken. In fact, death is the beginning of everything. What do those ordinary people know? No matter how long a life is, there will always be a limit. Only death is eternal. The black-clothed man roared and said, "That's right. You guys have already gone mad." Yi Qianqian was unmoved and said. Next to her, Antarctic Unfettered stared at the two of them, as if he wanted to see something. The situation in front of him looked very strange, but he still treated the black-clothed man as his ally. Although he did not know where he came from, it was better than fighting alone with Yi Qianqian. Accept death, embrace death. Why are people so stupid? They just don't understand. The black-clothed man roared with a somewhat crazy expression. That's because you're all wrong. Yi Qianqian said faintly, "The mistakes you have committed must be washed with your own blood. Clean up the sect." You want to clean up the sect with your own strength? That's good. I haven't made much progress in these years because of the old man's favoritism. He actually didn't tell me the complete cultivation method. If you were the old man's successor, then it couldn't be better. I can just kill you and seize your fortune. The black-clothed man said with a somewhat distorted expression. Whoosh! The black-clothed man suddenly slashed the sickle in his hand. The sickle in his hand exuded an incomparably sharp aura. It even gave off a feeling that it could shatter the heaven and earth with just this aura alone. He was strong, very strong. In fact, he was even more tyrannical than South Pole Loose Cultivator. No one could resist him. I originally wanted to get rid of him first. Now, it seems that I will have to get rid of you traitors first. Yi Qianqian moved slightly, and her body swept out like a bolt of lightning. Death lotuses appeared under her feet one after another. Every time she stepped on a lotus, she would cover a distance of thousands of miles. It was simply terrifying. Bang! The collision between the two sides was not as silent as many people had imagined. On the contrary, an astonishing light erupted. Both sides seemed to know each other like the back of their hands. All of their attacks were easily blocked by the other party. Many people were very curious as to why Yi Qianqian said that she could clean up the sect of a quasi-emperor. At this moment, they also understood that this was Yi Qianqian's true strength. Even a quasi-emperor would find it difficult to contend with such a powerful strength. South Pole Loose Cultivator heaved a sigh of relief. Although this seemed very cowardly, he also understood that this woman had a terrifying aura and strength. At this time, it was not necessarily a bad thing to withdraw from this battle. At this time, the two of them were inseparable. One side wanted to seize the fortune, while the other side wanted to clean up the sect. Obviously, neither of them had the time to look for trouble with him. He suddenly became overjoyed. He could take advantage of this opportunity to get rid of Yi Shiwen. He didn't dare to let Yi Shiwen continue. Otherwise, the one who would die would be him. However, a huge fire phoenix soared into the sky just as he was about to attack. Chapter 28:36. A loud cry was heard as a huge fire phoenix fell from the sky and went straight towards South Pole Loose Cultivator. South Pole Loose Cultivator quickly retreated and teleported away. He was shocked and angry at the same time. He had almost been killed by the fire phoenix. This had happened twice in a row, which made him even more furious. That huge fire phoenix didn't succeed in its first attack. It soon revealed itself to be a woman with a cold and beautiful face. Who else could it be but Hua Minghan? Yi Shiwen caught a glimpse of the heavenly tribulation and was pleasantly surprised. First, it was Yi Qianqian, then Hua Minghan. Yi Shiwen was very worried about these two people, so he was relieved to see that they were safe and sound. Bastard, you dare to come here with your soul incarnation? South Pole Loose Cultivator was incomparably angry. It would have been fine if her real body had come here. However, she had come here with her soul incarnation. She was looking down on him. She didn't even put him in her eyes. That's enough, Hua Minghan indifferently said. Her body blossomed with a burst of astonishing flames and soared into the sky. It didn't look like a soul incarnation at all. Even her real body wouldn't be this powerful. Soul incarnation? Yi Shiwen carefully looked and found that it was indeed the case. Although it was hidden in a group of flames, the wisp of her soul was too thin. So much so that people could easily see that it was just an ordinary soul incarnation. It wasn't her real body. In that case, Hua Minghan's real body should still be inside the ancient road. So how could her soul incarnation be so powerful? Although South Pole Loose Cultivator was a bit despicable, he was still a genuine expert of the late stage of quasi-emperor realm. However, he was almost seriously injured by Yi Shiwen's attack. Many quasi-emperors and god-kings were still watching the battle from afar. They felt very strange at this time. How could a soul incarnation be so powerful? Even the so-called #1 expert in the world wouldn't dare to say that a soul incarnation could defeat South Pole Loose Cultivator. Not to mention, it was just a wisp of soul incarnation. Moreover, it was just a wisp of soul incarnation. Many people began to get curious. Could it be the Phoenix robe? Yi Shiwen's eyes suddenly lit up. It was rumored that the Phoenix ancestor used her own feathers to refine a matchless robe, which was the Phoenix robe. During the first battle against the heavens, it had shone brilliantly and defeated countless experts. Later on, he had revived several times when the ancient Phoenix realm was in danger. He had saved the ancient Phoenix realm, and his status was very high. If Hua Minghan could single-handedly contend against a late-stage quasi-emperor expert, then there was only one possibility. Yi Shiwen's reaction was the fastest, but the reaction of the others wasn't slow either, and they also reacted one after another. Phoenix clothes, it should be the Phoenix clothes. Many people cried out in alarm. Dao artifact, another Dao artifact. During this period of time, they didn't know how many Dao tools they had seen. Usually, it was not easy to see any Tao tools, but now, because of Yi Shiwen's tribulation, they were constantly seeing Tao tools appear. They had never seen so many Tao tools in their entire lives. Good, good, good. South Pole, unfettered, said coldly. What audacity. A mere primordial spirit incarnation dares to ride the phoenix robe here. He was also experienced and knowledgeable. He hadn't reacted in the beginning, but how could he not react now? He gnashed his teeth in anger. He was drooling over the phoenix clothes in his heart. However, he dared to ask Yi Shiwen to hand over the thunder character charm. However, he didn't dare to say the same thing to Hua Menghan. The reason was very simple. Hua Menghan had the backing of a colossus like the ancient Phoenix realm. Even if she had been seriously injured, but her background was still far more powerful than an unfettered person like him could imagine. If he was given another opportunity, he wouldn't have meddled in this matter even if he was beaten to death. He had only heard that Yi Shiwen had enemies all over the world. It was unknown how many people wanted him dead. However, the person who had invited him hadn't said that so many powerhouses would emerge in order to help Yi Shiwen. Moreover, so many Tao tools had appeared for Yi Shiwen's sake. Things had already gone beyond his initial expectations and had gotten out of his control. It's enough to kill you. Hua Menghan didn't say anything. She didn't have much time to waste. She couldn't display the full power of the phoenix clothes even if she had come here with her main body, let alone her primordial spirit avatar. She had asked the elders of her clan to pour power into her primordial spirit avatar. She had come to rescue Yi Shiwen this time. Every bit of energy used would be less, so it wouldn't have the ability to fight continuously. This was the limit of what she could do. The elders of her clan weren't willing to awaken the tool spirit of the Phoenix clothes no matter how much she had begged. The Phoenix King had been besieged last time. How could he have resisted the many experts of the heavenly race if he hadn't had the protection of the Phoenix clothes? How could he have blocked the pursuing army of the heavenly race and allowed the army of the ancient Phoenix realm to retreat? However, they had paid a huge price. The Phoenix King had perished, and the Phoenix clothes had also been damaged. Now it was sleeping in the Phoenix clothes. They would have never awakened the tool spirit of the Phoenix clothes if it hadn't been for the most critical situation. It was obvious that Yi Shiwen wasn't in a critical situation in their opinion. In fact, they didn't even have the slightest favorable impression of Yi Shiwen. He was the son-in-law of the ancient Phoenix realm. However, their relationship wasn't close. In fact, it was somewhat bad. They wouldn't have even considered helping him if Hua Menghan hadn't begged them. Bang! Hua Menghan moved. The sky shook and the earth quaked. The blazing light that had covered the entire sky was burning. It was accompanied by her burning half of the Star River. Then, she pounced towards the South Pole loose cultivator to kill him. The word ice on the South Pole loose cultivator's body became even more dazzling. It erupted with boundless frost and formed an icy sea. Then it collided with Hua Menghan's flames. The entire sky had sunk into a world of ice and fire. The snow-white ocean and the fiery red river were annihilating each other from afar. Everything had disappeared for a moment. Even the sound couldn't be transmitted. It had completely disappeared. The fight had just begun on this side. It was in full swing. On the other side, the battle between Hua Menghan and the black-robed man had also entered a white-hot stage. Both of their fighting techniques were a bit strange. They would disappear into the void at any time. A part of their voidification allowed them to ignore each other's attacks. Their deathly energies would sweep across the entire area. In fact, there wouldn't be a single trace of vitality in this area. It could even be said that it was impossible for a living creature to survive in the midst of the deathly energies. Both their fighting techniques and martial arts were very similar. Many people had begun to believe that both of them were from the same sect. However, the situation of the Netherworld Kingdom was extremely mysterious. Many people could find traces of it in many ancient books. In fact, there were records about it even before the first war of resistance against the heavens. The Azura Devil King had killed his way into the Netherworld Kingdom. It had caused an uproar. Not only the Azura clan had records about it, but the other emperor's inheritances also had records about it. However, there weren't many records. In fact, there were only a few words. Everyone knew that the Netherworld Kingdom had a long history. However, many years had passed, so they could only read bits and pieces of records from the ancient books. They were unable to see the whole picture. Therefore, the grudges between both sides weren't known to the public. As expected, you received the teachings of that old man. The man in black exuded a terrifying, deathly energy. The deathly energy in the sky continued to swirl and twist. But it's useless. Even if that old man comes back to life, it's useless. So what if he's called the Netherworld Emperor? He's still going to die. Ha ha! The man in black's attacks became more and more frequent. Yi Qianqian's eyes were cold and filled with a terrifying, deathly energy. She didn't say anything. Instead, her attacks became even fiercer. The man in black snorted coldly. He formed a strange seal with his hand. Then, a series of buzzing sounds could be heard coming from the void. The void distorted, and a huge hole was torn open. One after another, figures flew out from it. A group of soldiers in ancient iron armor flew out from the hole. 8 of them carried a coffin and roared as they flew out. In an instant, hundreds and thousands of soldiers flew out. Every single one of these soldiers carried a powerful, deathly aura, and they were all completely different. They were experts that surpassed the ancient era that had revived in the modern world. What is that? Why do I feel an ancient aura from them? An old quasi-emperor said with wide eyes. The aura that these soldiers exuded was not modern at all. The aura of the experts of every era was different. Because of the passage of time, the cultivation methods of each era were different. This caused everyone's aura to be different. It was easy to distinguish. What are those? Ghost soldiers? Someone exclaimed. Many people recalled that in the legends about the underworld, it was mentioned that they had a terrifying army of Ain soldiers in their hands, all of whom were experts who had fallen in various eras in the heavens and realms. These experts had fallen in different places. Many of them were not taken back by their sections. Instead, they were taken away by the underworld and refined into ghost soldiers. That army had never been mobilized, so the people of the world were not very clear about it. The only time that people's horizons were broadened was when the Azura demon lord attacked the underworld. He controlled the power of the demon world and formed an army to conquer the world. There was nothing he could not do. In the end, he returned empty-handed in the war against the underworld. That battle made people aware of the existence of ghost soldiers, but after that, no one had seen them again. All of this had been buried in the depths of the legends. Ghost soldiers passed through, carrying coffins to fight to the death. Many people thought of this terrifying legend. In the various worlds, there were legends of ghost soldiers passing through and conquering the unknown future. When ghost soldiers passed through, even the gods had to avoid them to avoid being contaminated by their deathly energy. Now, it seemed that they could finally see their true appearance. Chapter 28:37. Ghost soldiers cross the border, carry the coffin, and fight to the death. This sentence had been passed down for countless years, and it was unknown how many experts had been deterred by this terrifying sentence. At this time, they finally had the opportunity to witness this scene. These ghost soldiers all carried a terrifying aura, and each of them was a super ancient expert. They were already experts from a long time ago, and after going through the sacrificial ceremony of the underworld, they had become even more terrifying. Kill! The battle cries continued, and there was no time to rest at all. These ghost soldiers directly rushed towards Yi Qianqian to kill. In the blink of an eye, Yi Qianqian was already surrounded by these ghost soldiers. The strength of these ghost soldiers was extremely terrifying, and it was unknown how many years it took for the underworld to collect these ghost soldiers. In the countless years of history of the heavens, it was unknown how many peerless experts had died, and now, these peerless experts had become the ghost soldiers of the underworld. The rumbling sound of the army marching caused even the heavens and the earth to change color. Yi Qianqian's expression also changed. If she was an emperor, then these ghost soldiers might not be a threat to her, but she currently did not have such means. Ha 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 ha. in front of my ghost soldiers of the underworld. Even an emperor would have to retreat." The black-robed man laughed loudly. "Arrogant." Yi Qianqian snorted coldly. And at this moment, Yi Shiwen, who was still in the midst of the heavenly tribulation, suddenly threw out a ray of light. This ray of light directly broke the heavenly tribulation and then rushed into the group of ghost soldiers. Boom! This ray of light suddenly exploded, revealing one of the flags. Demon Summoning Flag. At this critical moment, Yi Shiwen threw out the Demon Summoning Flag, and at that moment, a huge crack was torn on the Demon Summoning Flag, and the sky was filled with demon aura. Countless demon kings rushed out, and with Yi Shiwen constantly feeding them with the blood essence and emperor source of quasi-emperors, these demon kings were now fat beyond recognition, and had regained some of the prestige they had in ancient times. Yi Shiwen did not use it under the heavenly tribulation, because it would instead strengthen the heavenly tribulation, which was disadvantageous to him. But now, to fight against the ghost soldiers, this demon summoning flag was necessary. "That's the demon summoning flag," many people exclaimed. "How come the demon flag is in Yi Shiwen's hands? How many treasures does he have?" Many people were already a bit numb. Yi Shiwen's enemies were formidable and dreadful. In fact, they had even dispatched more than one Dao tool. However, Yi Shiwen had blocked all of them. Yi Shiwen's strength was extremely formidable. Moreover, he had the help of powerful allies. He was by no means an ordinary person. Many demons even felt the call of the demon summoning banner in their bloodline. From the moment the demon summoning banner was born, it was given an important mission. The ancestors of the demon clan all swore a heavy oath and even placed a part of their nascent souls into the demon summoning banner, so that they would never betray it. This importance was passed down from generation to generation through the bloodline. It was just that the demon summoning flag had been damaged for a long time, and they had almost forgotten this call. Now that the mark in their bloodline had recovered, they all remembered this call. Many people thought of the ancient heavenly court and the glory of the ancient great demon. Countless years ago, the demon race also had an incomparably glorious era. Looking from afar, the ghost army and the demon army that rushed out of the demon summoning banner were like two raging tides that fiercely collided with each other. In an instant, it was unknown how many demon kings and ghost soldiers were blown up. Both sides were almost evenly matched. It was hard to separate them. "What other tricks do you have now?" Yi Qianqian's face revealed a slight smile. She looked indifferently at the black-robed man and said, "Damn it!" The black-robed man couldn't help but be a bit stunned. He didn't expect that Yi Shiwen would actually have such a trick. The demon summoning banner was actually in his hands. Such a treasure should belong to our ghost kingdom. With the demon summoning banner, our underworld can control the world's demon race and become invincible. The black-robed man roared and said, "We also want to live under the sun. The ghost kingdom will soon dominate the world." "Courting death," Yi Qianqian said coldly. "Now is the time to clean up the traitors." Yi Qianqian shot forward like an arrow and directly rushed in front of the black-robed man, clashing directly with him. Bang! 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 The sound of fierce collisions was endless. The entire area had become a huge battlefield. There were battles that exceeded the limits everywhere. Usually such battles might not even happen, but now they could be seen everywhere. All of this was caused by Yi Shiwen's tribulation. This made everyone's evaluation of Yi Shiwen increase again and again. This person had infinite possibilities for improvement. As the old saying goes, you can see what kind of person you are from the level of your enemies. Yi Shiwen was able to attract those powerful enemies to use Dao tools to deal with him. To a certain extent, it also served as a foil to his strength. It was impossible for ordinary people to even get a glance from these powerful enemies. Just when everyone thought that this was all, a new unforeseen event occurred. A terrifying aura erupted, engulfing more than half of the universe, evoking the fear in everyone's bloodline. The pressure from the bloodline even made everyone feel the urge to kneel down even though they were far away from the universe. A huge foot descended from the sky. It didn't dodge or evade, and directly stepped into the tribulation cloud, and directly stepped in the direction of Yi Shiwen. Rumble! Just as foot trampled through the heaven and earth. The earth quaked, and the mountains shook, and heaven and earth wailed. Wherever this big foot passed, countless heavenly tribulation lightning people had no time to dodge. They were trampled and exploded. Even the few quasi-emperor lightning people did not have the slightest difference. They were directly trampled and exploded. Under the tribulation cloud, above the sky, Yi Shiwen's demon wings spread out behind him and constantly flapped the sky. That blow just now almost trampled him to death. This foot directly penetrated the clouds. It could even be said that it did not care about the heavenly tribulation that was still flashing with lightning and thunder. The heavenly tribulation could not hurt this foot at all. Even the quasi-emperor could be killed by the heavenly tribulation. Only the emperor could completely ignore it. Their bodies were truly indestructible. Except for the Tao tools composed of the great ways, no other mortal things could hurt their bodies. And in this era where the emperor did not appear in the world, the answer was obvious. The emperor's corpse that had brought great trouble to the allied forces of the various races had finally appeared. This was the worst situation that Yi Shiwen had imagined. Even the previous waves of attacks that intercepted Yi Shiwen were not the most troublesome, because the real big trouble was waiting for Yi Shiwen here. Yi Shiwen, today is the day you die. The aloof and cold voice came from the depths of the universe. Who else could it be but D&I? Sure enough, as Yi Shiwen had expected, it was D&I who had controlled the emperor's corpse. Only he, who had the opportunity to become an emperor, could approach the emperor's corpse and control it. If it were anyone else, even Mahesvara could not do it. D&I, now everyone is looking for you everywhere. How dare you come out now? Yi Shiwen was not the slightest bit moved in the face of this scene. Although this was the worst situation that he had expected, it was still within his expectations after all. Who can kill me? D&I snorted and said. Indeed, now that he had occupied the emperor's corpse, he was almost invincible. Although he could not really break out the powerful strength that belonged to the emperor, the possibility of killing him was not high. Don't be too arrogant. Those who are too arrogant will die faster. Yi Shiwen said coldly. You are talking about yourself. It is time for you to pay your debt. Dini's cold and ruthless voice came. Yi Shiwen looked around. The lightning people army that had been trampled had begun to revive gradually. Many of them rushed towards the emperor's corpse. Whoosh! A huge whistling sound came. It was a huge hand that was about to penetrate the tribulation clouds again and fall down. The endless tribulation clouds that seemed invincible could be penetrated so easily. This made many experts who were watching from afar gasp. They thought that they had overestimated the strength of the Emperor-level masters. However, seeing the performance of the Emperor's corpse, they suddenly realized that they had underestimated it. Boy, you helped me last time. I will repay you this time. Hurry up and cross the tribulation. Let me consume less of my energy. Suddenly, a voice resounded in Yi Shiwen's mind. Then, a blood-red ray of light soared into the sky. It broke through the blue dome of heaven and the tribulation cloud and went to meet the big hand that was slapping down. Buzz! A silent collision. The wave set off drowned everything. All the waves entered the chaos that was torn apart. They were all swallowed up. Nothing was left. What is that? Many people opened their eyes wide. It seemed that they wanted to see what could block the sneak attack of the Emperor's corpse. A figure appeared. His whole body was blood-red. He was holding a long sword in his hand. It exuded a shocking blood-red light. The blood-red law was raging, forming a terrible storm. He had used this long sword to repel the sneak attack of the Emperor's corpse. And in front of him is you. That huge Emperor corpse has also appeared. That attack just now had shattered the space he was hiding in, so he had no choice but to appear. At this time, everyone finally saw the true face of the Emperor's corpse for the first time, especially those experts who did not participate in the expeditionary force. For the Emperor's corpse, even if there were pictures, They could not describe the horror of the Emperor's corpse. Many people's eyes were on the blood-red figure. The horror of the Emperor's corpse was needless to say. So, what could block the Emperor's corpse? Was it another Taoist tool? Chapter 28:38. Everyone realized that they were already numb. They were completely numb. They didn't feel anything when they saw the doctrine instrument. Wasn't it just a small doctrine instrument? Yes, after seeing so many Tao artifacts in a row, they no longer had the same sense of mystery and adoration towards Tao artifacts as before. Yi Shiwen was incredible. He was really going against the natural order. It's you again. Don't even think about escaping today. Dini's voice came from the Emperor's corpse. There was a bit of anger in his voice. It could be said that the sword of Avicii had swallowed the Tianqi Emperor's sword right under his nose. To the Tian clan, the loss of an incomplete Tao artifact was a huge matter. To the complacent him, it was also a huge blow. Not to mention that he had an even greater scheme. If he was able to seize this ominous sword that had swallowed the Apocalypse Emperor's sword, then his strength would rise by another huge leap. Unless a true imperial monarch made a move, otherwise no one would be able to pose a real threat to him. Originally, he didn't have such an ability. But now that he had taken control of the Emperor's corpse, he had the capital to fight against the doctrine instrument. Escape? Ha 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 ha, little boy, when I was conquering the world, who knows where you were drinking milk? The sword of Avicii sneered and said, Well, then come and let me see. D&I said coldly, You want to go against the natural order with just a celestial instrument. Clang! The sword of Avicii walked step by step toward the Emperor's corpse that D&I had taken control of. He was expressionless, and his body exuded wisps of blood-red, killing intent. Wherever he passed, there were bursts of explosions. The world shook violently and was collapsing. The Tao power that the Emperor's corpse exuded was torn apart by his killing intent. It couldn't do anything to him. Humph! D&I smirked coldly. Rays of blood-colored radiance shot down from his body, almost crashing down in the direction of the sword of Avicii. He didn't even need any weapons. The Emperor's corpse itself was the strongest weapon in the world. Except for the doctrine instrument, other celestial instruments couldn't even break its defense. Naturally, he had nothing to fear. The sword of Avicii emitted a dazzling brilliance. It instantly turned into a sword aura that swept across 30,000 miles. It directly slashed down, smashing the stars and shattering the sky. Bang! With a loud crash, both sides collided like peerless celestial artifacts on the spot. The shockwaves set off were like tsunamis, soaring into the sky and spreading out in all directions. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The void was trembling violently, groaning, but it didn't completely collapse. The heavenly Tao was reinforcing space, not allowing anyone to cause trouble. A direct collision between an Emperor corpse and a revived Tao item was absolutely rare, even rarer than a collision between Tao items. It could be said that it was something that only happened to men in countless years. Both sides did not gain the upper hand in this exchange. Although the Avicii sword was tyrannical, it was facing a real emperor's corpse at this time. If a real emperor was alive, then it was possible to take him down. On the other side, D&I didn't have it easy either, because he had to endure quite a lot of attacks. After all, he wasn't a true emperor, and that was his biggest problem. After the first attack failed, the sword of Avicii's weapon spirit attacked again. Thousands of swords flashed across the sky, and all the murderous aura in the world gathered together in an instant, condensing into a terrifying power of the killing Tao. Wallalala! Countless swords flashed across the sky. Child's play! D&I sneered. He opened his hand and turned it into an 8 trigram in the void. This 8 trigram emitted the power of yin and yang. It didn't dodge, but directly suppressed the sword aura. Rumble! The intense collision was still going on. The boundless sword chi blasted out and directly blasted into the 8 trigrams, almost causing the 8 trigrams to explode in the void. But in the end, it was suppressed by the 8 trigram. The power of yin and yang was boiling on the 8 trigram. Once it attacked, Death and life were tumbling. Both sides didn't hold back at all. Once they attacked, they used extremely strong power, power that could break the void. Child's play. What about now? The sword of Avicii's weapon spirit sneered. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of swords flashing was heard, and countless swords flashed up to the sky, turning into balls of light that shot into the depths of the universe. Every sword aura was as big as a mountain, and they were all emitting majesty from the sword of Avicii. This was the power of the sword of Avicii when it was unsealed. It wasn't real swords flashing, nor was it real sword aura. When the sword of Avicii was awakened, the flowing energy was already about to break the sky. One could imagine how terrifying the power of the sword of Avicii would be once it was fully awakened. An emperor standing on one side of the universe could destroy the universe on the other side. It was definitely not just a legend. This is... D&I gasped. The power of the sword of Avicii, when it was truly unsealed, was terrifying. Even he, who was in the emperor's corpse, felt a bone-chilling coldness. One should know that this was originally impossible. With his cultivation, it was impossible to do anything to him. Moreover, he was in the emperor's corpse, so no negative state could affect him. Right now, to put it in his perspective, it was just like a true emperor monarch's blessed land. The seal had been undone, and it was invincible, to the extent where even he could feel it. Impossible! At this moment, all the spectators in the distance gasped in succession. The sword of Avicii was too powerful, and it was practically like the awakening of an imperial monarch. Even if all the other Tao artifacts were unsealed, they wouldn't possess such terrifying might. How did he do it? But D&I reacted quickly. A normal doctrine instrument could not exert such power unless it was in the hands of an emperor. Now that the sword of Avicii was behaving like this, there was only one possibility. That was, after he swallowed the Tianqi Emperor's sword, he combined the power of two doctrine instruments together. That was why there was such a possibility. Thinking of this, he became even more furious. The sword of Avicii swallowed the Tianqi Emperor's sword right under his nose and escaped right under his nose. But now he only needed to unseal it, and he could exert the power of a normal doctrine instrument at the peak. So, do you still think I can't kill you? The device spirit of the sword of Avicii said coldly and calmly. Even though D&I was in the Emperor's corpse, he still felt a kind of pressure. Now, I will let you feel how small you are. Even though you have entered the Emperor's corpse, you will never understand if you haven't entered this realm. The device spirit of the sword of Avicii said coldly. How will you understand? If you haven't entered this realm, you will always be an ant. Clang, clang, clang. Countless long swords rushed out, instantly turning into long dragons that flew forward, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, incomparably sharp. These long dragons were blood-red, and they looked ferocious. They were extremely terrifying. Don't look down on me. I am someone who is destined to become an emperor. How dare you look down on me with just one attack? I think you must be tired of living. D&I was furious. Instead of retreating, he charged at the sword of Avicii. The blood-red sword dragons that were charging down almost instantly arrived in front of him. Break for me! D&I roared and threw a punch. It landed on a crimson sword dragon in front of him. Boom! The sword dragon couldn't resist the attack of the Emperor's corpse at all. With just one punch, its entire body exploded and turned into a sky full of sword chi. The sword dragon couldn't hurt D&I, who was hiding in the Emperor's corpse. However, there was a crack on his fist. Although it quickly recovered due to the strong recovery power of the Emperor's corpse, this in itself represented a shocking sign. The forbidden emperor hiding in the Emperor's corpse was not truly unsolvable, nor was it truly impossible to do anything about it. The sword dragon spat out by the sword of Avicii could really hurt him. Boom! 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 D&I continued to attack, but the sword dragons in the sky were still bombarding him. He had no time to take care of the cut wounds. He could only rely on his strong recovery power to constantly recover. It was a fierce battle, even more amazing than the battles in other places. Everyone was dazzled. There were high-level battles everywhere. They were all super chaotic battles that they might not be able to see in their lifetime. Normally, it was already a rare experience to be able to see even one pair of them fight, let alone so many of them moving around. Yi Shiwen, who was originally in the heavenly retribution, didn't attract too much attention. Instead, he was completely ignored by everyone. Compared to the amazing battles in other places, although his battles were thrilling, they didn't seem to be so attractive. However, at this time, Yi Shiwen obviously didn't have time to care about what others were thinking. He kept flashing in the heavenly retribution. Every time he flashed, there would be a group of heavenly lightning soldiers pierced through and killed by him. He didn't know what kind of strong enemies might appear later, but he understood that if he continued to delay, some enemies who were originally hesitant would also join in. Then it would evolve into a real disaster. Therefore, he had to pass the heavenly retribution as soon as possible. This was the best way to prevent those enemies from taking risks out of desperation. Those enemies kept joining in the heavenly retribution. Although there were disadvantages, it wasn't completely without benefits. Many heavenly lightning soldiers were also killed by them. Those quasi-emperor-level heavenly lightning soldiers were also seriously injured. They were no longer as powerful as before. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.